We're going to get started today. Hello and welcome to Farm Voice. This year's theme here in Calgary is the next generation of agriculture. For those of you who have not met me yet or don't know me, my name's Nicole McCauley and I'm a vice president here at AdFarm. I'm going to be your MC today, which I'm very excited about because it's also my first in-person Calgary Farm Voice event. So on behalf of me and the AdFarm team, very happy to welcome you today. Another special thing about this year's Farm Voice is that we're celebrating our AdFarm 40th anniversary. And today's kind of special because it feels like we're going to be peering into what the next 40 years looks like. We're going to gain further understanding and insight of the evolution of agriculture, what's happening on farm, and how it's shaping the trajectory of farming for the future. We've invited some of our top voices in agriculture, some of who you may know, some might be new to you as well. I want to extend my warmest welcome to every one of you. Some of you, again, I know, and some of you I don't, and I look forward to meeting with you during the reception as well as the intermission today. Before we begin, in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, I want to acknowledge that today we are gathered on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani, the Iarhe Nakota Nations, Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Goodstoney, and the Tsuut'ina First Nations people. Calgary is also Métis Nation of Alberta Districts 5 and 6. These lands have always been a gathering place, and we are proud to continue in this tradition. So with that, let's get forward into the agenda. Just kidding, there we go. Here's the agenda for today's event after long-awaited breath. After our two speakers this afternoon, we'll have a break where, again, like I said, you can join us in the lobby. There will be refreshments and drinks there. If you do need the washroom, they are out in the lobby. So for those of us that are in person today in the Cardell Theatre here in Calgary, please make your way out quietly if you need to use it in between our speakers and our panel this afternoon. Here's our first speaker. It's an honor to introduce our first keynote, Dr. Joy Agnew. Joy holds a PhD in Ag Bioengineering from the University of Saskatchewan and has over a decade of experience in managing research programs. As Vice President Research at Olds College of Agriculture and Technology, she oversees research in crops, livestock, environmental stewardship, and smart agriculture. Joy also leads the college's innovation activities, smart farm operations, and breeding programs. She plays a key role in developing the college's smart ag ecosystem, integrating academic programming, applied research, strategic partnerships, and extension activities. Joy is a past president of the Canadian Society of Bioengineering and an adjunct professor at the University of Saskatchewan. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Joy Agnew.
Thank you for that introduction and warm welcome and for the invite to speak today. I will say that when Bryce first invited me to speak, it was January 2nd, and July 4th seemed like a really long time away. And here I was at midnight last night trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to say. So I'm actually going to be speaking from notes today. I don't normally do that. Those of you that have heard me speak, I don't normally speak from notes, but this is a relatively new message for me, and it's an incredibly important one, I think, especially with today's topic of the next generation of ag. So yeah, when Bryce invited me to speak, he said, yeah, we would love to hear you talk about the new technologies that are going to be available to the next generation of ag. So of course I said yes, because that's really what we've been focusing on for the last 6 years at the Olds College Smart Farm. We are working with technology developers and industry partners to test, validate, scale, iterate, and build technology solutions in a real farm setting and at a commercial scale. We're trying to de-risk and accelerate the development of technologies and support the adoption of those on farm. Over the past 6 years, we have worked with hundreds of different technologies, sensors, and data systems and solutions that have flooded the ag sector to really put them through their paces, assess how well they function and operate, identify the value of putting them to use, and then sharing honest feedback with the technology developers and other industry stakeholders and farmers about the potential value of those technologies for their farms. And yes, I'll be talking about many of these different tools and technologies today, but I'm also going to be talking about a very important piece to the puzzle that I think is missing, and it hasn't had the attention it deserves. So in my role over the past 6 years, and even before I came to Olds College, I became very, very familiar and acquainted with the innovation ecosystem. And in Alberta, the innovation ecosystem is actually pretty well defined. There's lots of really great pieces in place. And some of these pieces include entities like Alberta Innovates and Prairies Can that have funding and support for innovators to access capital and access to innovation experts. There's systems like the Regional Innovation Network System and various accelerator and incubator programs that are helping tech developers get the skills and contacts they need to move their ideas forward. There's various post-secondaries, living labs, smart farm-like entities to provide platforms for research, testing, and validation. And of course, venture capital firms that are always ready to invest in the next solution that's going to generate big returns. Yes, the innovation ecosystem still has some disjointed pieces and maybe some missing holes, but there's been a lot of effort and investment in building the ecosystem to generate as many new ideas, widgets, gadgets, and solutions as possible. But we haven't invested the same effort in what I think is the most critical ecosystem, especially for ag, and that's the adoption ecosystem. So yes, I'm happy today to talk about all the latest and coolest tech that might be available to the next generation of ag, but I'm also using my time today to really start a dialogue and maybe express a call to action of sorts, that without more effort, programs, and investment in supporting the adoption of technology, we're never going to realize the full potential that technology is bringing to the ag sector. So first, to set the stage a little bit, I don't think I need to explain this in great detail to this specific audience, but obviously, agriculture is a critical component to Canada's economy, related to GDP, job creations, and of course, feeding the world. But it's an incredibly risky business. Farmers and ranchers are challenged every season by things that are outside of their control. Shifting weather patterns, drought, disease, labor shortages, market disruptions, rising input costs, the list goes on. Any and all of these can devastate a farm in any one season, and all of these are outside of their control. No other business on the planet takes that kind of risk year after year after year. And really, that is the value proposition of technology and data use, or increasing technology and data use. It's to help manage that risk by improving efficiencies, optimizing yields, streamlining decision-making, and maximizing sustainability. So some of the technologies and tools that are currently available or coming available that we have a lot of experience with on the Olds College Smart Farm, I'll run through a bunch of them sort of at random, but microclimate and weather and soil data sensors. So these are in-field microclimate or weather stations essentially to provide in-field information to make better management decisions related to fungicide application or management during the growing season. Rather than relying on a weather station and current or forecasted weather from 20 miles away, you actually have site-specific information to make in-field data-driven decisions. Alongside with that is many more options coming available for in-season scouting and data collection and management. So looking at drone imagery or satellite imagery or handheld sensors or simple apps that are helping to collect geo-referenced data in the field to identify areas that might need to be managed or treated immediately or those to keep an eye on. As applied crop protection data straight off of the equipment is becoming more and more common and streamlined directly into an automatic data management system. So this is as applied maps generated from the actual equipment, so you know exactly what's being applied, but alongside that, additional information about what kind of pesticide was actually used, the application rate, the cost of the product, the cost of the application, which can then be layered to generate more information about profitability on a region by region basis within that field. All of these data flows are becoming more and more automatic, and that information is available to look at trends and analysis and, again, make decisions either in season or for future seasons. These data management systems and flows are also going to become increasingly important around record keeping and providing data and information for sustainability programs as those become more and more popular and roll out. Another technology that has been rapidly advancing over the last decade is the use of sensors and optical spot spraying technology. So rather than spraying herbicide or any kind of in-season pesticide across the entire boom width of a sprayer, these sprayers are in real time with the sensors on board looking for weeds and spraying only the weeds. The first generation of this technology that is commercially available is a green on brown technology, meaning that it sprays everything that's green. So that is suitable for a pre-emergent or a post-harvest spraying activity. But more and more, there are now access to green on green technologies that in real time, as you're passing through the field, it's looking for weeds versus crop. And it's being able to trigger the nozzles and spray only the weeds. This is resulting in chemical use reductions up to 97%, and that has been verified through a scientific study at Olds College at field scale, with no negative impact on yield. In other words, it's effective. The weed suppression, weed management is effective, spraying 97% less chemical in a pre-emergent application. Another technology that is likely to become available once regulations catch up is the opportunity to spray using drones. So this is a potential game changer, allowing to target spraying very, very precisely within the field, drastically cutting back on pesticide use, and possibly having a very positive impact on herbicide resistance trends, which is a major threat if we don't get that under control. Of course, with harvesting, there's all kinds of technologies and tools and data pieces that come with harvesting, the most critical part of the crop production journey. Obviously, yield data and yield maps have been growing in use over the last decade or so, but more and more, there's now onboard computers and systems for monitoring and controlling harvest losses, minimizing the amount of seed that goes out the back of the combine. Or there's now even specialized equipment on board to monitor grain quality. So just like you get a yield map, you now have quality indicators in a map form showing that variability across the entire field, which honestly at this point is unlocking all kinds of potential that we don't yet recognize. It's going to be allowing us to connect dots that have never been connected before and possibly making agronomic decisions within a specific field to drive certain quality factors such as protein or oil content. Once the grain gets in the bin, there are a number of technologies and tools available to minimize the risk of spoilage. So monitoring conditions, mainly temperature and moisture within the bin, controlling fan and heaters to minimize or maximize the efficiency of in-bin drying systems, and just overall reduce the risk of spoilage. Soil mapping has come a long way from randomly collecting samples and throwing them in an ice cream bucket, throwing them on some newspaper, drying them out and sending them to a lab, and then waiting forever for results. There's all kinds of advancements in the ability to, at a high resolution, basically map the entire field and sometimes annually get really good high resolution information on different soil characteristics, such as soil carbon, EC, organic matter, pH, and these things just lend insights on how that field might be managed on a zone by zone or in a variable way to maximize efficiencies. The other really, I think, big potential value proposition of high resolution soil mapping is it's going to make it easier on the research side, or at least on the policy side, to make more rapid assessments of how practice changes have impacted properties like soil carbon. Right now, it's a 5 or a 10-year wait. You implement a new practice change on a field or a pasture with the hopes of increasing organic matter content or soil carbon, and you wait 5 or 10 years to have a proper assessment of whether there was a change or not. So high resolution and highly accurate ways of measuring these parameters can help us assess more quickly and make better decisions about practice change. I'm saying this is maybe coming available. This is sort of like the holy grail, but real-time soil nutrient sensing could theoretically eliminate the need for soil sampling at all, because in real time, as you're driving through the field to seed, it is assessing what's in the soil. It's making an assessment of what the soil needs in order to achieve the yield goal. and then in real time, actually doing that variable rate application and putting exactly what's needed where to meet that yield goal. Like I said, that is the holy grail. We're not there yet, and I'm not sure we will get there, but this is where technology could take us in the next 10 to 15 years. So I'm going to pause a little bit. I'll get back into more technologies, but I want to make it clear that I strongly believe, and many in the ag innovation sector also believe this, that technology and data are going to be simply tools to support decision making. Farming is never going to be taken over by robots and AI. It's not in the cards. Okay, we're always going to need strong agronomy, animal science, and human decision-making skills. So everything that I have talked about and will talk about is really just there to support and streamline decision-making and mitigate risk. So I mentioned a whole bunch of different kind of tools, but what are these potentially being used for? And the most obvious case, I guess, and the most popular one that I'm sure everyone is very familiar with is variable rate fertilizer application. So this is a key component or a key part of precision agriculture. So rather than blanket application of a fertilizer or even seed across an entire field unit, it is understanding the variability within that field and then applying nutrients and sometimes even seed at the appropriate rate for that region within the field to maximize productivity, minimize the use of inputs, and also result in a more uniform crop stand and maturity, which is another positive benefit around harvesting and harvest efficiency. So variable rate fertilizer application is a well-known technology, and or a well-known practice, and it's been driven by the advancement of technology in understanding soil variability, and then in the actual seeding equipment itself to manage, sometimes on a section by section or drop point by drop point basis. Data is another big part of this picture, and the question or the comment we always get is, yeah, I have a ton of data, I have no idea what to do with it. And I get it, that there's still a lot of challenges and a lot of dots to be connected there, but the most fundamental or basic use case, I guess, for collecting the right data, you don't have to collect it all, collect the right data, and you can get really great insights in terms of cost of production and profit. So very straightforwardly or fundamentally, if you know your yield and your yield variability across your field, and if you know exactly what was applied in every area, so even if you're doing variable rate, all those as applied maps will now be layered over top of your yield map, and a cost of production for each individual area can be calculated based on the rate of fertilizer, the seed rate, and any in-crop pesticide applications, and that will spit out a profit map. And that will show you areas of highest and lowest profit, or sometimes losses in a field. And over time, if you see consistent trends in that, you might be able to make different management decisions. So really that is what data is all about on farm, is better decision making and reporting. But it's not easy. Different data systems, different data formats, nobody talks to anybody, and everything's in different files and different everything. I get it. It is a challenge, but there's a huge potential to unlock if we can make those systems more streamlined, to talk to each other, and make it easier to interpret and turn them into actionable insights, because it's really going to be streamlining decision making, provides great trend analysis or opportunity to look at different trends and say, oh, I never really realized that based on my anecdotal observations over the last 20 years. This is really what's happening in this field. I wonder what's going on there. I wonder if I should be managing that differently. Again, back to the point of different sustainability programs. You're going to be looking for very specific data and specific formats at specific resolutions. So having a really strong data management system is going to provide that data for verification for those incentive programs. And also it's going to help estimate the impact, even if it's not on the research scale, at a farm scale. If you are an early adopter and you're wanting to try a new practice or adopt a practice change, you want to know how it's impacting your bottom line or how it's impacting the efficiencies in that field. So estimating the impact of practice change is a lot easier when you have the right data collected in a very consistent and accurate way. And then obviously identifying non-productive areas in the field. Again, if you see that trend year over year, there might be alternative uses for that chunk of land in the field. So I've talked a lot about crop production. I don't want to ignore livestock. I have one slide on livestock, sorry. But there's a lot of work and a lot of advancements in technology and data on the livestock side as well. So data collection from processing events or at chute side, apps and novel tools to help support the digitization of that, cameras and artificial intelligence to support health monitoring, and specialized feed bunks and other tools to, on an animal by animal basis, monitor productivity and sustainability when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions. So these tools are obviously being used for herd health management, genetic selection decision making, so really maximizing the productivity and sustainability of a specific herd, and obviously monitoring profitability. Razor thin margins, so every benefit or every little bit of data that can be used to improve that is a gold. So if it seems like technologies are rapidly evolving, and when you think about your home computer or your smartphone for over the last 10 years, you've seen it, right? Well, it's because it is. Technology improves at an exponential rate. Basically, technology breeds technology. Technology allows us to discover and develop superior systems, processes, and resources, and those improved technologies then make even more discoveries easier and quicker. So this creates a positive feedback loop where the technology builds itself and accelerates its own progress. So I want everyone to look at that 25-year span that I have pointed out there, 1995 to 2019, because I'm going to be referring to that later. But for those of us that remember the launch of the information superhighway in the early 1990s, it launched us into a whole new world of information access and communication. But honestly, looking back at what we had in the early 90s, it wasn't a lot to write home about. It was not very functional, it was clunky, it was slow, it was expensive, and it tied up our phone lines. But it didn't take long for the internet to really expand its functionality, become faster, cheaper, and even more accessible. And in the 25 years after the launch of the internet, the value in technology growth was roughly equivalent to the value in technology growth that occurred over the 200 years prior to that. And look at what we expect to happen in the next 25 years with the rise in computing power and the capacity of artificial intelligence. For those of you that have dabbled or played around with any AI tools like ChatGPT, you might think that, yeah, it's kind of a neat tool, but it's not really much to write home about today. If the exponential trend continues, and it will, AI tools such as ChatGPT will advance in their functionality, accessibility, and impact to our lives even more than the information superhighway did, and at a much faster rate. This is all really great, and many people are very excited about the opportunities that AI is bringing to ag. And I agree that the advancement of technology can help address many of the challenges associated with farming and food production. But there's one big problem or gap that we still need to acknowledge and address. Technology growth is exponential, but human readiness for it is not. So the gap between technology available and readiness is just going to continue to grow at an exponential rate unless we do something to adjust those rates. So this brings me to my first collision point between the innovation ecosystem and adoption ecosystem. Innovation ecosystems are very focused, honestly, maybe obsessed, with the term called technology readiness levels, or TRLs. So it's basically a scale that helps describe where along the innovation continuum a new idea is, how close to commercialization it is, or how ready it is for commercialization. But that scale does not address our readiness for technology. No scale that I have seen does. So the approach really is to develop as many technologies as possible and see how many get adopted. So why do I think readiness for technology is important? Well, if we aren't ready for it, we aren't adopting it. Why is adoption important? Well, without adoption, we cannot realize the value in these technologies available to us. In addition to helping us really realize the value of technology, strong adoption rates of best practices and tools on farm are really required to help us meet productivity and sustainability targets and goals. For example, to meet the target to reduce fertilizer emissions by 30%, we need to improve fertilizer use efficiency. Fortunately, we expect or can possibly meet that target, or come close anyway, with strong adoption of 4R nutrient stewardship practices, such as using the right source of fertilizer at the right rate, using the right timing, and the right placement of that fertilizer. This is a made-in-Canada stewardship solution that has really generated a lot of discussion and a lot of interest, and there's a lot of early adoption of these, but not a lot of understanding of how much of an impact to the overall emissions will these practices have. Now, while we have this really great made-in-Canada solution with nutrient stewardship, we need near 100% adoption of all these stewardship practices to meet that emission reduction target. Further to that, we don't currently have really good data on what our current adoption rates are for the individual practices within 4R. So it's estimated that in the range of adoption for right source, we're somewhere between 6 and 14%, for right rate, 15 and 40. Right time and right placement generally have higher adoption rates just because we've been talking about them for so much longer. But officially, based on the number of acres in Canada under an approved 4R management plan, only 4 to 6% of acres have adopted 4R nutrient stewardship. Now, those are registered acres, which is pretty rare. So unofficially, it's been estimated that about 70% of crop production land has some component of 4R nutrient stewardship, which is great. Canada's leading the way when it comes to 4R nutrient stewardship. We need to talk about that more, by the way, but that's a different topic for a different day. So this information tells us, or tells me, two things. Adoption rates are not currently well measured or monitored because sometimes this data is collected based on number of farms, sometimes it's number of acres. Is it an annual thing, or is it, if I did it once, I can check that box off? Like, there's not a whole lot of good quality control, honestly, through that data. I'm not bashing StatsCan at all. I'm just saying I don't think the importance of high quality and high frequency adoption data is there. The second thing that it points out to me is that how important it's going to be to accurately measure and monitor adoption rates to assess the progress towards sustainability and to assess the impact that various programs and incentives have on adoption and uptake of technologies and best practices. So let's talk about barriers to adoption for a little bit. So there's actually quite a bit of information out there. There's been a lot of surveys, a lot of reports done on barriers to adoption or factors that influence adoption. And many of them show very similar trends to this one that I just picked out, and a lot of the same categories, usually pointing to cost or return on investment, or uncertainty in how well a technology will work for them in their specific growing region or for their production system. So this is great information, and like I said, this trend and these categories are pretty common across all the different surveys I've seen. But how have we been able to address, or how can we measure, if we address any one or a combination of these barriers to adoption, how are we going to determine if that actually makes a difference on adoption or not? Well, without really good adoption data, it's very difficult to do that. But let's look at a historical example just for some context. So let's look at the adoption rate of conservation tillage in Western Canada. So this shows the rise in adoption of conservation tillage in Alberta and Saskatchewan from 1990 to approximately now. So it's a nice, slow and steady increase. That vertical dotted line represents the year 2002, when an offset program was launched in Alberta to basically financially incentivize farmers to adopt conservation tillage. So hypothetically, taking care of one of those barriers to adoption. How did that impact the adoption rate before and after 2002? Do you see a big jump in that slope, or do you see a big jump in the trend? No. And that same offset program did not exist in Saskatchewan. Is there a big difference between Saskatchewan and Alberta? No. It's a slow and steady linear increase. And if you remember the slide I showed earlier showing exponential growth of technology, but human readiness for it being linear, that's just the natural human response. This trend is basically in line with human response to change. But to meet the productivity and sustainability targets that we have, and to take full advantage of technology and what's becoming available to us, we may not want to wait 30 years to get to 80% adoption of things like optical spot spraying or variable rate application or the right practice for that right farm. So if we don't want to wait 30 years, is it going to be possible to accelerate the adoption timeframe? Well, let's take another closer look at this historical example and think a little bit more about what was happening, what other factors were influencing or happening in that same time frame. So this is from the mid-90s to, let's say, the mid-2010s. During that time frame, we, as I showed earlier, had exponential growth in access to information via the internet. We also had traditional ag extension and support networks that included consultants that would come on farm, or learning centers, equipment events, mail-outs, fact sheets, lots of information getting out about the benefits and values and how to do conservation tillage. And during that time frame, we also saw a significant shift in farm cash receipts or revenues. Basically, it was flat until 2005 and then a large increase. So if pricing and financial risk are one of the main barriers to adoption, you would think there might have been an impact on adoption rate or the adoption rate curve once farm cash receipts and revenue changed. And yet we don't really see a huge jump around 2005, although we were near 80% adoption by then anyway, and it's going to be difficult to get it to 100%. But these are just illustrating that we don't necessarily know how current factors or environmental factors or incentive programs are going to impact adoption. Maybe they won't, just like that incentive program seemingly had zero impact on adoption rates. So if we try to knock out all those various barriers, like seeing it work in my area, or access to data, or trust in a service provider, how do we know for sure that those are actually going to influence uptake or adoption rates? So if we want to accelerate adoption and really get value out of the technologies and everything that's available to us, we need to better understand how and measure how we can influence adoption and readiness for technology. The technologies that are available to current and future generations in ag are incredibly powerful, but they represent a significant and disruptive step change to the traditional paradigms and nature of farming. Human nature is cautious, linear, I guess, but it's cautious, and the nature is to invest your time and energy into what you are, not what you're told. Farmers and ranchers at their core are boots on the ground, tactile, hands-on people. We have the technology today to completely remotely assess disease risk in a field and make really strong recommendations about whether or not to apply a fungicide. And yet, vast majority, if not all farmers, or agronomists are out walking in the fields at a certain time of day and trusting the muddy boot or wet pant leg test. The technology is there. Satellite imagery, the spore traps, all of the algorithms, it's all there. But we aren't adopting it. It's against the human nature. So how do we get across that hurdle? So all of these technologies represent tremendous opportunity, but a huge step change in the standard practice. The technology is there, but are we ready for it? And if not, how do we get ready for it? So there's some missing pieces, I think. I've highlighted this already, but more accurate and representative and consistent information on current adoption rates are required. There's no easy solution to this, but we need collectively to come together and very consistently monitor this information. And it needs to be very specific. It needs to be acre-based, not based on number of farms. Ideally, we have Western Canada data specific or separate from Eastern Canada data, because basically it's almost entirely different farm production systems and different best practices, and we might not want to be accelerating the adoption of practices from the East in the West, obviously. And it needs to be fairly frequent if we're going to really monitor the impact of practice change on adoption. If we're going to be implementing new programs or incentives or ways to reduce that gap or improve that readiness for technology, we can't wait until the next StatsCan consensus survey comes out to determine if we've actually had a positive impact or not. So it needs to be frequently assessed as well. We also need better information on the factors that influence technology readiness, not just the barriers to technology. Now, believe me, I'm an ag engineer. I am not a social scientist. I'm very much like hard science. But I have definitely, my mind has been wide open around the importance and the value of really diving in deep on the social science side for this exact reason. We need to better understand barriers to adoption, barriers to readiness for technology, and then how we can close that gap. So is it technical skills? Is it comfort with technology tools? Is it all about connectivity and interoperability options? Is it understanding the use cases and return on investment? Is it more information there? Or is it a fundamental human response thing that we somehow have to understand, recognize, and address? I don't know. And then we also need to put as much, if not more, effort into building and resourcing the adoption ecosystem as we have the innovation ecosystem. I'm not saying ignore innovation. I'm not saying throw it out in the trash. I'm saying just recognize that, especially in ag, that innovation ecosystem needs to be tweaked, and the overlap with adoption needs to be identified, and that adoption ecosystem built out. And ideally, that is also going to address the technology readiness of the ultimate users. All right, so quick summary and some take-home messages. Food production is incredibly complex, it's challenging, and involves a lot of risk out of the producer's control. And that is really the value proposition of technology. And there's countless technologies becoming available and flooding the market. The ones that are probably the most valuable are those that are supporting decision-making, not trying to totally automate or take over the operations on a farm. Technology and data are tools to support decision-making, and the need for strong agronomy, animal science, and system knowledge and problem-solving skills are still always going to be required. Technology is advancing at a far faster rate than our ability to be ready for it. And this is only going to get worse as the seconds tick by. That's what exponential growth is all about. It is incredibly rapid, incredibly quickly. So my summary or calls to action today, we really need a better handle. We need a collective strategy and focus on measuring adoption rates, because they are ultimately the key metric that the ag innovation ecosystem or ag adoption ecosystem needs to address. There needs to be more effort and investment in that adoption ecosystem. I don't have it all mapped out. I don't know exactly what it looks like. I wish I did. I just know there's going to be a lot of key players that are already a part of the innovation ecosystem that will have key roles in the adoption ecosystem, but there's pieces in there that are required to close that gap between innovation and readiness. So Canadian Ag is leading the way. Let's tell the story, and I hope I have given you some more food for thought today. Thank you. So I believe there's time for Q&A. There's some mic runners in the audience, and I believe the online audience is also able to ask questions that'll get relayed to me. So any questions? Fire away.
Joy.
Hello.
I'm down here at the bottom, right next to you. Yeah.
Hi. Can't see anything.
No worries. Yeah, you touched on a few things with, 4R stewardship and doing a better job telling that story and pesticide reduction. And I think a lot of that tells into a good consumer-facing story that ag can tell too. So do you think about that at Olds, about how some of these technologies can kind of make their way down the value chain and tell that story to consumers as well?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about that all the time. Todd's in the audience somewhere as well. This is one of his like side pet passions at the college, is getting as many people through the college to hear the story of not just the smart farm, but also ag and the sustainability and the forward thinking and early adoption happening within ag, and the fact that this isn't your grandfather's farm, and the misconceptions and myths out there about over-fertilizing because it's easier. I mean, those are just so wrong. And so we tell that story to anybody who comes through our doors. And we've actually had pretty influential people coming through our doors to hear that story, from everywhere from federal ministers and deputy ministers and Senate committee members. So we're definitely doing what we can to get that message out, but we'll always be willing to do more. There's a question right
Hi,
there.
Joy. That was great. Couple questions. Is Olds doing anything, or other ag colleges doing anything about this adoption innovation issue? And the second part of that is, have you seen in other industries or other places that have been successful on driving adoption?
Yeah, great questions that I think about a lot. So at Olds right now, on the supporting adoption side, it's all about our sharing information and doing demonstrations and helping farmers and ranchers understand the functionality of tools and technologies, which best practices might be most suitable for their farm and their specific growing region. So we are doing that through our research and field days and demonstrations and knowledge transfer events. It's the tip of the iceberg that's required, right? Because to your second point is where else is this being done and what's been really successful? I don't have a good answer for that, because I wish I could look at another model or another institution or whatever that's just hitting it out of the park, and we're all trying to figure out how can we support adoption, what is needed. And like I said in my talk, I think it really comes down to, we need to combine the farming science side with the human science side of social science to really understand the readiness for technology, new tools, and change. We're talking about like a paradigm shift. It's a massive, massive change, and humans don't do that easily. So how can we address that? And other than looking at historical information, which is great to provide some insights, from where I stand, I don't know where else it's being done really successfully.
Hi, I'm just thinking about like the technology, I guess, exponential growth. Do you see, I guess, from your standpoint, where does it seem like the technology advancements are overlooking the human element of how they're being applied, and overlooking like the farmer element and just getting too excited about the technology advancement?
Yeah, can I copy and paste that into the next time I give this presentation? That you nailed it. And I think that's partly the excitement about technology and AI everything, and it's also partly because that's how the innovation ecosystem has been developed. It's just get as many ideas out there. Now I know that there's a lot of effort, or new tech developers are encouraged to engage with their clients and try to understand their needs and their problems and everything else. But honestly, it's not being done to the degree that it needs to, in order to close that gap of just throwing a whole bunch of cool widgets and gadgets out there versus actually solve a problem and support the adoption of it by helping the readiness for technology.
Going back to the adoption part, and growing up on a family farm, do you think there will be just a natural kind of jump in adoption, given some younger generations are more, I guess, used to adapting to technology? Or do you anticipate it to be kind of that flat curve that you showed on your diagram?
Well, unless we do something differently than we did in that 30-year time span that I showed for conservation tillage, no, right? Because there would have been at least one generation change in that 30-year time span, and we didn't see any major inflections in that adoption rate curve. So I guess that's what I'm saying, and that's what the call to action is. What do we have to do differently in order to have an impact on adoption rate? Is it what? I honestly, I don't know. I wish I had answers, but I don't.
So looking at the new technologies that the college is working on, obviously they're very exciting and cool to think about the opportunity to have agriculture be so precise. But when you're going through the research, obviously ROI is the biggest consideration as a producer. What do you do throughout the research to ensure that ROI messaging is kept consistent on how much money you're getting back by adopting these new technologies?
Every project we do, every technology we assess has an ROI assessment component to it because it is so important and critical. And we've actually gotten feedback from tech developers that they weren't even thinking about that until they had a conversation with the project team at Olds, and they're like, oh, well, no, it'll get adopted. Like, we don't have to worry about cost, right? Okay, no. Not even close. And not even close to understanding what a reasonable threshold for ROI is for farming or cost. So yeah, it's baked into every single project that we do. And we share that information with our public reports as well. I actually even did a seminar last year or the year before on helping farmers do some really kind of basic math on how to calculate return on investment or payback period for their own purpose, right? Because it's very different across every farm. So there needs to be training too on really what those terms mean and how to assess them for your farm.
We have a question over here.
Thank you. Hi, Joy. Thank you for the presentation. I completely agree with the adoption concerns. I think that is huge. One of the things I've been advocating for is with a lot of the funders that are out there providing grants to research, and sometimes getting some of those grants, it stops very abruptly once you've advanced the TRL or once you've proven out a theory. One of the things I've been advocating for, and the question will come in a second, but one of the things I've been advocating for is that these same smart farm networks or grant applications not only manage the front-end research effort, but that they also provide the funding to support the external channels of communication about what came out of that research. So this is these three are the most high ROI, this is what we see. And so it's part of the communications effort. The question I have for you is, do you know any of the kind of funders? You mentioned a couple of them, and you and I have even talked about some of those groups before, but do you know of any of them? Like, I tend to be shouting this over and over that it should be part of the package. Do you know of any that are considering that? And do you think that could potentially be a way to kind of have at least the seed funding spur some of that communications effort?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for your advocacy and your added voice, because we need more of those, talking with the funders about the importance of longer term, more program-based funding for the information sharing side of it. Because yeah, everything right now is very much project-based. RDAR, or Results-Driven Ag Research, obviously sees the importance of getting information to the hands of producers, and they call their kind of initiative in that the final mile, but it's still project funding based, right? So they will fund, or they will fund activities within a project to disseminate that information to producers, which is great. But then, yeah, once that project is done, that can't, or typically won't carry on, right? It's on to the next project, and then it'll be the next telling of the story to farmers and ranchers. So there needs to be a much more cohesive and programmatic and strategic way to keep that information rolling and keep it getting and iterating it and getting it into the hands of the people that need it. I've had those conversations with funders as well, and yeah, it seems like there's head nodding and there's understanding that, yeah, it's important, but they all feel like their hands are tied because program-based funding, especially for ag, has basically disappeared.
I've got a question up here.
Oh, hi, Joy. Thank you. I've spoken with you before. I was wanting to go back to your timeline there briefly of how we saw that the minimum till or zero-till cropping practices increased. And I think, in my opinion, that's something that we saw, that it was a farmers or producers could visually see the benefits. They could witness them. And so I'll use this example of us on our farm. We have 2 new combines that they have the AI technology for and it seems to work fairly well. There still is that trust factor, and those are John Deere's, and we do seem to have a very good relationship with John Deere, so they seem more capable of helping us with issues. But here's another example I'd like your comment on it, is that on our farm, sometimes we're waiting for that next generation to come, but I feel like I'm a kid with a present from Christmas, and we've got the big box there, and we're playing with the box instead of the big present, you know? And so I've got this new drill. This is year 2 for it, new drill. It has the variable rate technology, and it also has the sectional control. I'm not using both of them. And we have there's that window to put the crop in the ground. Everybody races to the finish line. And if it didn't work, this is year 2, it didn't work, I said, forget it. we're not doing it, because you can't have sectional gaps and misses, and we're just not trusting the technology. And I wonder if you could, where's that gap? But I'd appreciate if you could comment on that. Thank you, Joy.
Yeah, it's a huge gap, and it's one that we're very well aware of, and that's one more, I guess, challenge for ag tech and ag tech innovation and adoption, right? There's all kinds of challenges, but one you just nailed is that there's no time. There's so much risk in fiddling with tools and sensors or whatever, trying to make it work. You have a very short window to get things done. So, that's not typical in any other industry. There's always kind of time to troubleshoot or time to fix. You don't have those really tight windows. And so that is another big challenge for ag tech and ag innovation, is that it has to work. It has to be reliable. It has to be simple. It has to be interoperable. It can't, you don't have time for that. So I 100% hear what you're saying, and we hear it a lot. And I, again, don't have an easy solution for you, but it's just another illustration or another example of why ag tech innovation and adoption is so challenging.
I've got a comment to that. Can everyone hear me? Is that the mic? I do carry. Rumor has it. Two things that I always use, Joy, that I think we need to capture the success story in adoption. Okay, sorry, online can't hear me. Now they can. So there's two examples that I always use that were success stories and are success stories. Number one is GPS and auto steer, right? Adopted basically over 3 seasons to a high percentage of 80+%. And going back to all those core fundamentals, there was an ROI. It worked kind of in the first year, but it worked pretty good by year 3. The other one that I add in that is a really interesting one is herbicide tolerant crops, right? Canola went from, I think, over 3 cropping seasons, went to almost 80% adoption of herbicide tolerant. So I think we need to take some learnings from that, because the extreme speed that those technologies, the example, and these guys behind me heard it the other day, is, when you sell a car, a dealership sells a car every day, right? Or they probably had a bad day. When you sell technology in agriculture, especially crop agriculture, you get to sell it once a year, right? So when you think about the fact that over 3 seasons, 2 major technologies were adopted, it's really the equivalent of new technology being adopted in a car dealership in 3 days. Right? You had 3 days, 3 seasons, right? 3 opportunities to sell, and technology will be adopted. But there's lots of learnings there that we need to apply as we bring new technology in on pre-education, demonstration, all those things that I think you guys are doing a good job at the college, that we have had success stories, and we got to figure out, okay, how do we maximize the success stories and take the learnings and apply it into new technology? Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and great examples on GPS and auto guidance. Like, yeah, the tremendous success story, because it was visual, it was easy to see. You can actually quantify the ROI relatively easily. You don't need very complicated equations to do that, and it worked, right? So I guess just to maybe follow up on one of your comments around that pre-education, or making sure that the next generation of farmers have the right skills, I guess, to really take advantage of technologies. I think Olds College is sort of leading the way in that with the new ag tech and digital ag programming. But I also wonder, how many different hats or jobs does a farmer have to have? Because already they have to be agronomic specialists, financial specialists, equipment repair, heavy-duty equipment mechanics. They have to be like a jack of all trades. And now we're going to add on there, instrumentation, data science, technology, data transfer, all of that as well. I mean, it's great to be able to have basic understanding of all that, but how deep does it have to be to really drive that readiness for adoption? I don't know. Again, I have no answers today. I'm just asking a bunch of questions. But it's definitely something to look back. Again, I love looking at historical examples, right? So looking at adoption of GPS and other success stories will be critical for identifying what this adoption ecosystem really needs.
I have a question. I'm kind of up in the corner here. So Dr. Agnew, I'm curious to get your thoughts and kind of perspectives or insights on, sorry, I'm way up in the corner.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go.
The next generation of ag innovators. So you, great presentation talking about some new technologies, the importance of adoption. What is Olds College kind of seeing for the next generation of ag innovators? I'd imagine being Olds College, you've got a lot of farm kids that are interested in, learning, being a part of some of these innovative solutions. Are you seeing more, urban kids kind of get excited by this space? Curious for comment there. Thanks.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of excitement in ag, and more we're engaging with non-traditional or non-rural cohorts of students, and their lack of awareness, I guess, of what the ag industry really is and where they might be able to play a role in it if they have a passion for economics or finance or instrumentation or robotics or programming, right? Like there's definitely been a massive shift in that over the last my 5 years at Olds College, which is exciting. It's great. It's exactly what the industry needs, right? We need different perspectives and different skill sets to come in. I would say any student at Olds College who's spent any time with me probably will run far away from entrepreneurship and innovation because I tell them how challenging it is, especially from especially the ag standpoint, how difficult it is to actually address a problem, solve a problem with technology, and get it across the finish line to a commercial product. But there's lots of interest, lots of excitement. It's just I think we need to approach it a bit cautiously and make sure that we are addressing the needs in a really efficient and strategic way, rather than just inventing a whole bunch of widgets and gadgets and throwing it at the industry.
I think that's it for questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Agnew, for that very insightful presentation. We are going to very quickly jump into the next one, but before we do, in my sheer moment of panic, when the agenda didn't pop up, I did forget to say that there was going to be this Q&A, so thank you to Joy for facilitating that so smoothly and well. But also, for those of you who actually do know me well, Q&A is my favorite part, because wasn't that just incredible to be inspired and then to have robust dialogue about how to move forward in our industry. So thanks, Joy, again, for your wonderful presentation. With that, it's my pleasure to now introduce you to our second speaker, Terry Aberhart. Terry is an agricultural enthusiast which shows in his impressive resume as the leader of Aberhart Farms, CEO of Sure Growth Solutions, partner of Aberhart Ag Solutions, and co-founder of Convergence Growth, Inc. Terry has shared his insights globally, speaking in over 10 countries. He operates Aberhart Farms with his wife, Lachelle, and their 6 children, some of who are here today with us, managing a 17,000-acre grain farm. Terry co-hosts the Growing the Future podcast in what I can only imagine is not very much spare time, and contributes to farm-focused publications. He is also committed to personal growth and giving back through various initiatives, embodying his passion for agriculture and leadership. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Terry Aberhart.
Awesome. Super excited to be here. What an awesome venue. Great presentation before. Really glad to be here. I really like the themes of the adoption challenge. I think that's very true. I love the analogy of the playing with the box. I'm hoping that these young guys up here aren't interested in playing with the box. I think that's part of the solution. But anyways, really excited to spend some time with you today. Thanks so much to Ad Farm for giving me the opportunity. As mentioned, my name's Terry Aberhart. Grew up at Langeberg, Saskatchewan. We're currently in the midst of kind of forming this Aberhart group. Our core business is a farm at Langeberg. We're just under 19,000 acres now. Run an agronomy consulting business focused around precision ag. We distribute sustainable fertilizer solutions through the partnership with my brother in Aberhart Ag Solutions. We run a podcast that we like to tell cool stories about people doing fun stuff in agriculture. We just are excited about partnering in a seed potato farm in Yorkton, Saskatchewan this spring. do some work with Warren Bills and Convergence Growth, run a conference, and do some ag tech consulting. And we're also working on a food ingredient label that I think is something that we need to use to tell the story of agriculture. So I'm really excited here today to talk a little bit about what I see the future of agriculture looks like. We got a great room. Are you guys ready to have a little bit of fun this afternoon? Awesome. Good. We're going to have a bit of fun. I always like to start with a bit of a picture of my family. This is a lot of the reason why we're here. I'm very lucky to be supported to do all the crazy things that I do and love. You can see we've got a bit of an addiction with starting new fun things, but really for us, it's kind of around the theme of our farm, and a bit of family as well. But we're really passionate about growing the future, and I think for us that means just looking at ways to do things in a better way. How do we improve the industry? How do we make the world better for the generations to come? So that's something that really motivates us, and I get excited about. And so today we're looking at a little bit where are we going from here. And Joy had such an amazing segue. We could have had the same presentation, I think. There's going to be a lot of parallels. It's really, there's been so much incredible change that's going on, and today we're taking a bit of time to think about what does that look like going forward. I really like this chart, and I think this is a lot of what Joy was talking about, that adoption, and she identified something that was really key around that we're not keeping up to the pace of change in technology, and we need to find ways to do that, and hopefully the next generation can do better than we can. But this is a lot of what the world looks like. You always end up way farther ahead than you would have ever imagined, and this is going to happen quickly, more quickly than it ever has in the past. And so today is really a little bit about thinking about what does the future of the farm look like? Where are we at today, and where are we going, and what do we need to think about? And so, like this image, Holden is going to be up on the stage here later. He's a little older than he was in this picture, but I like this quote from Benjamin Franklin, and it's about, tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn. And I think part of what we need to do is to work together and involve each other so we can learn together. So I'm going to ask for a little bit of participation here. I really like pretty pictures too, like Joy, so I'm going to have a lot of cool stuff. I'll try to get through it fairly quickly so we can have some great discussion. I'm looking forward to some discussion at the end. But I'd like all of you let's take a moment to visualize what the future of the farm looks like. So just go along with me here. I'm going to be watching you, so I might pick on you later if you don't play along. But let's just close our eyes for a few seconds. Everybody close their eyes and think about, what does the future of the farm look like in 10 or 20 years from now? What kind of technologies, what kind of challenges and opportunities we may have? What is the consumer going to be looking for? Think about how far we've come today and where we're going, and get a picture in your mind of what some of those things look like for you. Okay, so you can open your eyes now. We'll see if everyone's awake. I might have put some people to sleep there. So we're here for the Farm Voice event. We've been in this amazing cathedral, right? So I want to hear everyone on the count of 3 yell out Farm Voice. Nice and loud and strong. Are you guys ready? 1, 2, 3. Farm Voice. Well, that was pretty good. Let's try that one more time. Let's really get the acoustics going in here, right? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Farm Voice. Oh, that's awesome. That's great. All right. Sweet. I just wanted to make a mention of Les Henry. We recently lost Les in the industry. He was one of the pioneers in the Canadian prairies, a legend. His handbook on soil and water is the Bible for any agronomist. He was one of the pioneers in precision agriculture. You think about the pace of change. He was figuring this kind of stuff out way back in the 60s that, hey, there's something different in the soils. And if we soil test them, we got different levels of nutrients, and maybe we should be doing something about that. Just wanted to give a shout out to Les. He's no longer with us. Been an amazing mentor and icon, and was always willing to share his knowledge and was well ahead of his time. And hopefully we have many more like him in the future. Really, for me and on the farm, it's about better data, better decisions, and better outcomes, much like what Joy was talking about. And there's some really interesting data. We've been working with M&P for quite a while on the accounting side. And this is some really powerful research and data that they came out with a few years ago through all their benchmarking data. And what this shows is the difference between a great farm and a good farm. And a great farm grows a higher gross revenue between the yield and the price that they get for the crop. The production expenses are relatively the same or pretty close. Gross margin, what it costs them to grow the crop, the labor power, machinery, and the land building finance, there's a little bit of a difference there, but it's pretty close to the same. But the difference in net profit is $100 an acre. That is huge. That is huge. And it's mainly around the production. So even when I was a very young lad running, and I still feel like I'm a young lad, but maybe not as young as these lads up front, but running around as a mechanic, fixing tractors, there'd be vast differences between the farms just down the road in the same soil in the same area. And the difference that I notice is the people that were doing agronomy and growing better crops. And we all know we got to manage a lot of things well in a farm business to do well. But you can make a lot of mistakes if you grow a really good crop. And so when they looked at what these farms did differently, what that top 25% did, there was 5 key things that stood out that helped them get that $100 an acre. It was test and iterate fields on the highest frequency, so doing field trials, testing works, always trying new things, optimizing their inputs, so ensuring that they're soil testing, putting the right amount of nutrients down, the kind of things that Joy was talking about, collaborate with an agronomist closely around their targets and what they're doing. They're better at their execution windows and timings, and they track their data and make better decisions with their data. Essentially all things that I believe good agronomists help farms do better. It's a huge difference, and it was something that I saw in the industry when we didn't have any of this data to prove it. And data is very, very powerful. And I think in agriculture, largely, we come from this historical rugged independence or individualism where we've done a lot of things with our gut. And the reality is we don't have to do that anymore. We can make way better decisions with good data. On the financial side of things, there's a lot of the industry is going this way. Good peer groups, we're in multiple peer groups. M&P is doing things like this, other financial institutions, but starting to benchmark the financial performance of your farm compared to others in your area anonymously, so you're not divulging your information. And there's always great differences in farms, but there's a huge amount of value in starting to look at these trends, and you simply can't manage what you don't measure. So if we want to get better, we got to start measuring it. So these are just this generic example of some of the different kind of benchmarks and efficiencies and metrics that we have around the financial aspects of the farm that can help us make better decisions. And as a kind of an agronomist at heart and farm boy at heart, this is where I'm driven to see we need more of these kind of benchmarks and data on the agronomy side of things, and to show how we perform on the average and where we need to improve and get better. And so again, it's about bringing all of that data together. This is quite a few years ago already. I put this mind map together of just all of the different things that a farm has to manage in their day-to-day operations, from logistics to marketing to equipment to data to soil tests to just like a bunch of stuff. And then you wonder why we're feeling a little overwhelmed sometimes, and how many jobs does a farmer need to do? Well, there's quite a few on here. And so this is the reason why we need to start learning better what we're good at the farm and working with other experts, consultants. There's a lot of value in the world. Where we're going, there's a lot of people in the world that are way smarter than we are, that understand technology and know that there's something else to figure out besides the cardboard box to play with at Christmas. So there is some opportunity here. This is just some of the data that I think is important that Joy was talking about. Here's some data from our farm. We have soil test data back to 2006. We can look at trends in phosphorus or organic matter. We can also pull up all of our nitrogen levels from the farm very quickly, and we can see, hey, are we 10 or 20 pounds less than we were last year? We can make really quick decisions on a general scale about how much nitrogen or fertilizer that we need to buy, and just really powerful tools. And I think one of the things that we haven't really tapped in yet is how do we get better at the years and years of data, the temporal data that we have and collecting and most farms aren't using. This is also just an example of the weather station network. Crop Intelligence has done a good job. For years, we used to hear about big data, and we never really saw much benefit of that. But what I see now is we're starting to create intelligent data. So there's systems, there's tools, the work that they're doing at the college is how do we take all of this information and create an intelligent or simple report that someone even like me can understand and make a decision from, right? So we have real-time information on weather, rainfall amounts, how much water is in the soil, what the yield potential looks like, and it's not perfect, but it's a lot better than going out there and kicking the dirt and thinking, I wonder what things look like, and taking a guess of what's in the soil. We've been tracking and using a lot of this type of data for a long time. I think profit maps are really incredible, and this is just an example of breaking down the yield and knowing the cost of the variable rate fertilizer in each zone, getting down to a cost of production per bushel in each zone, and understanding what fields are performing better and what areas of those fields are performing better. And there's some really, really simple things that sometimes we miss in precision agriculture because we're trying to figure out all the complexity. This is an example from quite a few years ago where we had a field. These red areas are just very poor producing land, saline, hard to seed. You go there and get stuck. It's not very much fun. And we were going to let this land go as rented land. We did this analysis over 5 years of looking at the yield and the total cost of production and return, and we realized that in the poor area, we were losing $50 an acre by farming it. So would anybody here pay to go to work? But at times as farmers, we're paying to go to work. And so we realized that we could take that land out of production, we could farm 80% less and make more money. That sounds a little more interesting. And it's better for the environment as well. And so we put those kind of areas down on our farm to hay, and that, saline tolerant hay mixes and stuff can grow really well in those areas and actually start producing a positive income. And maybe the neighboring farmer, we don't have cattle, but there's other people that can put that into use. And so we need to change a little bit about how we're thinking about things. And just sometimes when you take the time to look at the data, it's amazing what you learn. And it's such a simple thing. This is just some of the things. We work with a lot of different gurus and experts and what I would call geeks, I guess, because we are a bit of geeks and we don't know how to do this all ourselves. But there's so many different tools and technology that are free. This is Google Earth, KML Maps. The blue lines are all the lines that the seeder went and the equipment went. So we know the approaches that they use. We know the roads that they can travel and where we shouldn't go so you don't rip down a power line because that's not good. And then we can layer on our different yield trials. And so we can zoom in and have a different field trial. We can have the notes about the trial right in Google Earth. Anyone can have that on their phone. This is just some of the ways that we're using technology to communicate and track information that we're doing. One of the things that's always is one of the things that we need to work towards is evaluating how well a field does on a per field basis as well as within that field. And so cattle farmers and those type of businesses are really good at culling the herd, but how often do we look at how each field is performing individually on a grain farm, and why aren't we doing that? So this is just an example report benchmarking the cost of production on each field, on canola fields across the whole farm. And we can see that depending on what kind of inputs go in, it's not always the highest yielding field that actually has the best gross margin or creates the most profit. And so these are some of the things that we need to start doing a better job of, just looking at really, really simple data and start identifying what are the issues, what can we learn from this, what's happening in those poor producing fields that we can change, or do we need to take some areas out of production? This is just putting it out on a chart, again with the benchmarking. So this is where I see more of this data going, is when we can start benchmarking across the whole farm. We can start benchmarking against farms in our area, what fields are doing the best. Maybe there's certain ones that aren't doing well at all that need a different kind of crop or just shouldn't be farmed, or as Les Henry would say, would sell that in the wintertime, you know. Also, we start looking at different production areas of the farm. So we rent a lot of land, and we have land in different blocks. We're spread out across 40 miles. And so we have some land in Manitoba that sometimes the farm team will complain, why do we got to drive across the valley in 40 minutes to the land over there? But it's some of the most productive land that we farm. And we know that from looking at some of this data. So these are just different management blocks on the farm, and how do they compare on average to each other when we're looking at maybe buying land or land rents? Where can we afford to pay more and still be productive or not? And then we're starting to look at within that land base. So this is one of those blocks or groups of land that we farm, and then breaking down individually within that land base how each of those fields perform. And so the Ron's home field is always a poor performing field. There's some more salinity on it. There's a few issues there. So there might be something that we could fix there. Maybe there isn't anything that we can do, but just having that knowledge of, or maybe that's actually, if an opportunity comes out, we swap that piece of land out for a different piece of land, whatever it may be. But this is the kind of information that when we have the data, it's really easy to understand and make better decisions. Nitrogen use efficiency, there's been lots of talk about this with the regulations, and I think there's going to be more of that stuff coming down. We can look at that in a lot of different ways. I won't get into the politics of that, because that's not something that excites me. But what does excite me is learning is why do we have different nitrogen use efficiency in a field, in different parts of a field, and are the numbers that we're using are the right numbers? And so this is some of the work that Leon did for us, that he'll be up on the stage later, and you can pepper him later. But we're looking at what did the crop grow, what did we apply, what's left in the soil, and what did the crop actually use, and why are those differences? And then how can we start benchmarking that efficiency? So there's a lot of other cool technology that we use to monitor field. This is a platform that we've been using, again, a free platform that you can just log your data into. It's called OneSoil. It's out of Ukraine. And those numbers are just the average NDVI index of the field at whatever time. And so we've been using this a lot for actually spray timing decisions and harvest decisions. So the lower the number, the lower the vegetative index. And it's a little bit different every year, but we can go to we start to learn each year that, hey, once a wheat crop hits 0.17, it's about 20% moisture, we can send the combines there, right? Or we know when it's ready for timing of desiccation. And what we've been learning is that it never follows the dates that the crop was seeded. There's so much variability in rainfall, even in a small area. And you can walk in and scout these fields, but how far can you walk into a canola field or a wheat field when it's, fully matured and see all the variability within the field? So this is giving us way more accurate data in in a glance at your phone to make those decisions. And it's just really, really simple stuff. So this is a thing that we can still use more and more just to make better decisions. This is another example. If you took that data, this is an NDVI index across the whole farm on, I can't remember what crop this is, might be barley or wheat. But we can start taking the average of each of those colors is a different year. And so then we can start trending that from year to year and see, like, do we think that we're on a higher yield potential trend than when we were last year? There's just a lot of different stuff that we're starting to look at. It needs to be pulled together. A lot of opportunity, but just some different examples and bigger picture trends. I think a lot of the precision farming and technology that we've been working with has been super focused on what I would call the minutia at times, which is great, but sometimes we get lost in trying to figure out to the smallest planter per acre, and we're missing some of these big, broad, large acre kind of trends and information that's so simple and actually giving us really valuable information we can make decisions on today. This is some of the work that we've just, Leon and the team at the farm have just pulled together this year, again, with technology. I don't even know what most of this stuff is, but somebody does. And tools, we can create our own customized dashboards and information. So this is just a couple pages of a Looker Studio dashboard where we have real-time information on the farm between the hours worked of our team, the fuel lock system. It was there was an error in the data this morning, so when we added this in. So not everything's perfect as we're figuring out these new things, and where all the field trials. So if we break this down into kind of each graph, this is all of our staff and all of the hours that they've logged in through QuickBooks, and we track when our team is harrowing or stone picking or seeding or whatever it may be. So we know it takes us about 800 to 900 hours to pick stones every year. So when we're planning the shifts and planning who we need and the resources that we need to do that, we can look at that. We can also click on any individual and find out how many hours they've been working in and what tasks and how much in each month. Just really powerful data at our fingertips, which is already data that's coming in and being recorded. We're just finding ways to display it differently so our managers and our team can make better decisions. So we have a fuel lock system on the farm now too, which is becoming more common. Everybody has a code. We can see the aggregate of the total amount of fuel that we're using and which months we're using more. So even from a cash flow and budgeting perspective, we were just looking at this the other day, and Holden's been doing a lot of football in Moose Jaw and driving around a lot. And so we clicked on and seen how much fuel he used. I won't tell you, but his eyes got a little bit wide. And I said, yeah, that's why I'm telling you, it costs a little bit of money to drive there, right? So I wasn't too surprised, but the number was pretty big. But it just, data that you can have at your fingertips on stuff that's already being recorded, right? But is anybody looking at it? And then this is just information that we're pulling out of JD Ops, John Deere Operations System, acres seeded, equipment, how many hours of each equipment doing each task, the fuel that's used, lots of different things, all at your fingertips on your phone. So I'm going to just shift gears a little bit quickly here into a couple other things that I see is a big trend, issue, and/or opportunity in the industry. Is herbicide resistance, which is becoming a bigger issue, and the fact that no one wants chemicals on their fields, right, wrong, or otherwise. And so, as an industry and as farmers, we can choose to maybe not agree with the messages that we're getting, but that doesn't really solve the issue. And either way, we need to start paying more attention to these things that are going on. Joy had some of this information and as well, but when you see things like this, that 80% of spray is going on bare ground, whether you're a farmer or consumer, that doesn't really feel that good. And the reality is a lot of the technology in farming has been built around a major issue of lack of labor. And so we have this huge equipment We have all this technology, and we've got 120-foot booms carpet bombing a whole field. It just doesn't make any sense when you really think about it. And we have technology today. This is when a precision AI at Regina, and there's a lot of companies out here that are working with AI, can identify individual plants. There's still lots of challenges here, but this is coming, and we can see where we can create maps. We can have technology to target weeds individual and do this in a different way. This still is going to take some time to get to market, and there's some systems out there that are starting to do this, but this is coming, and this is something that we need to embrace and get better at. But this is a one-time application, and there's a huge amount of data being recorded. And so I think as a farmer, how do we take this data from this one-time application and make a better decision this fall in this field and create that into a long-term system around herbicide management, knowing where the wild oat patches are and those kind of things. Again, this is just a little bit of a mind map around the different kind of factors and things that go into making a spray decision. There's a lot of things that go into just making a decision whether to spray or not, and when to spray and what chemical and those kind of things. And the reality is weeds don't grow evenly across the field. They grow in certain areas, in certain patches. And largely, we have no technology or very poor technology and software around managing those systems. We have incredible software and technology around satellite imagery, fertility, planning your fields, but not in this area. This is some of the work that we've been doing, capturing the weed patches when the crop's small and early, flying a drone over, recognizing that you can pick out some of those areas and look at, okay, how do we capture this? And those wild oat patches, for example, are going to be there in the fall. Can we go? There's a lot of different tools and technologies that we can use. Residual chemicals are $30 an acre. Why are we spraying that across the whole field when only 20 or 30% of the field needs it? Doesn't make any sense. And we have the technology to figure this out. This is an example. We did this back in 2008. That's a long time ago already, where we identified this is where the wild oats are, and if we got to go for a second pass or we want to put Avidex on the fall, how do we start using these strategies to create a much cleaner field so then the see and spray is even more efficient when we go across it? And how do we build and record what we did in the past and where these trends are so we can learn from what we did in the past? And the reality is now with AI, we can go back. On our farm, we have 18 years of soil testing, crop planning history, and yield data. We don't have that all figured out yet, but I know very soon we'll be able to apply the right AI engine to that, and they will be able to make a way better crop recommendation or fertility recommendation than I ever could, even though I did that for 18 years. Because I can't put all that data in my head. Can't put really any data in my head anymore. But these are the things that we need to utilize. This is, again, just one of those kind of zoomed in examples of Google Earth and some trials that we got going on and some of the things that we might do. And one of the partners that we're working with has developed a camera system on a quad that will go along and automatically take pictures. That's what all these little small dots are. And if you zoomed into one of those small dots, it would show the image of what it saw. You can start applying AI to count bugs, to do plant counts, to do so many different kind of things. We're just playing around just on the cusp with a lot of these things. But the amount of data you can start collecting with some of these automated systems and the accuracy and the granularity of that, and then applying tools like AI is going to have capabilities that we don't have with our own eyes or our own brains. So it's pretty cool stuff. So this is kind of gets back to this whole theme of what Joy was talking about a little bit earlier is, our grand challenge is ensuring that we have safe and healthy food for consumers. They want to make sure that we're doing it in a climate smart way, and we do as well. And we're doing that with the health of our planet in mind. And so this is one of the huge challenges that we have. And I think that there's a lot of farms, like our farms, and maybe some of you in the room, that are doing a really good job. And the data shows that the good farms using good agronomy and science and technology are growing better crops more sustainably in a better way. But we've done a terrible job of telling that story. And so one of the things that we started working on in the project with Precision AI around that chemical use was like, well, if we can use technology and create these reductions and we can track that, why can't we get paid as consumers and use that as a way to tell the story? I've realized, as I was one of those farmers that just wanted to go and farm, because that's just a lot more fun than trying to explain to a consumer why we do things the way we do. But when we're not telling our story, someone else is. Sometimes that story isn't exactly maybe the way it should be told. And so I think that all that consumers really care about is that their families are being fed, you know, from a farm that's making the best decisions available to them and continuing to grow and improve. So we started down this road around the chemical use, but realized there's a whole gamut of agronomy practices, much like an organic label or regenerative. We have to think about how do we celebrate and share and prove that using technology and science and data is doing things in a better way. And so there was a few collaborators in this project when we initially started. It was part of a Protein Industries Canada project. Precision AI, our Sure Growth company, and Exceed Grain Marketing. We're kind of looking at the next steps to look to take this forward, but it's really about creating that label that farms are doing this in the right way and having some very simple data to back that up, using the data that we already have and exists to display that in a better way. And so this is kind of the challenge that Joy was talking about, and this is something that I see that we need to do or band together for the industry. This is a screenshot of a presentation that I put together in 2019. The pristine ingredients label didn't exist back then. But what I've seen is all these challenges around technology, around consumer demands, about what the consumer wants to have that transparency. Largely, a lot of our farms already have this data. We're just not aggregating it or displaying it properly. We've got really great farms out there like Aberhart Farms working with great agronomists, but how do we pool all this agricultural intelligence together? How do we create those systems, the software, the sensors, the data, to prove the value, to prove the efficiency, and to help encourage farms to adopt more quickly, to have the support that they need? And then I was looking back at this presentation after we had created the pristine label and realized, well, that's where it fits, is in between that knowledge group and the bridge to the consumer. And hopefully you can use that to tell the story to the consumer. And so this is the vision that I have of the future, is we need to start working together for the greater good, because we cannot solve these problems on our own. And there's some incredibly bright and intelligent people out there, but when we're all trying to recreate the wheel, we're just not going to get there. And so I think our challenges in farming and agriculture is not our neighbor. It's figuring out these things and figuring out all the crazy stuff that Joy shared with us earlier as well. And so this is just an example of where I see this going. And a little bit of time for a bit of short interaction here. There's 2 canola crops. One of them was seeded on May 24th with 90 pounds of N, 34 pounds of P, 35 pounds of K, and 30 of S. And one of them was seeded a few days earlier with over 120 pounds of nitrogen, 50 pounds of phosphorus, more potassium, and about the same amount of sulfur. So if you had to pick which one was field A and which one was field B, which one would you pick? Pick that in your head or in your mind. And which one do you think is using nutrients more efficiently or water, and which one is sinking more carbon into the ground? Which field would you want? I mean, you're probably going to want the field that looks better. I'm not sure how many of you picked which one, but field A that was seeded later with less inputs was the larger, nicer looking canola. And that is not what most people would expect. And the reason why is that field has been managed with good data in agronomy and science for almost 20 years. Another field is a field that we picked up from a farm that didn't have the same level of soil testing, agronomy, and management for the last 20 years. And what we see over and over again is when you do things right and you treat your soil right, you grow more grain with less inputs in a more efficient way. And we are one of the most efficient producers in the world right here in Western Canada. And we're not telling that story. And when we look at the data, very, very simple data, it shows us, it tells that story. The first field only needed to be sprayed once because it was growing way faster and it was a much cleaner field. So it had half the chemical load per acre. That probably matters. It also grew that bushel of grain with 40% less applied nitrogen. And then we're worried about a 30% reduction target. Like, we're already doing this today when we're doing things right. It grew 8 more bushels of grain. And it used less water to produce that bushel of grain. These are all very simple metrics, and I don't have the carbon stuff in here because I don't know how to measure that, I'm sorry. We're all worried about that and it's important, but there's things we can measure today with great accuracy to tell this story, but we're not using it. So these are the simple things that I see, and then we'll put carbon in there when we figure that out, but I'm waiting for someone to figure that out. And so really I think this may change and evolve, but this is kind of where we want to go, and find a way to use this is to tell the story of technology and farming and encourage others to adopt that technology faster and to prove those use cases. And so in the future, I envision some kind of a network where we're using climate smart data and analysis. We have these benchmarking examples. We have real-time data to prove that we're improving. We're doing that with a growing community of experts, advisors, collaborators, farmers. We're improving profitability, and we're connecting the farm to the consumer through this label and to this ecosystem. And so that's, again, just a little bit about that there. I love this slide of just as we get close to wrapping and get questions from Abraham Lincoln or quote, the best way to predict your future is to create it. And I think that it's our job here with the people here in this room in the industry and hopefully the people sitting in front here to help us create it. One of the things that we've been doing to help kind of percolate some of this is last year we initiated this Convergence Conference in Regina. We're having it again this year. Our first inaugural conference oversold or sold out, which is amazing. And we're expecting that again. And what we're trying to do is converge, agronomy, new technology, business management, data, mindset, the food side of things, mental health, everything that's involved in agriculture, and converge it all together. Being the brightest and best minds all into one place where we can network and learn and have a bit of fun. AdFarm was a big supporter of this last year and really helped us out. Thanks so much for that. There's I think a QR code here for the passes, some technology I was supposed to use, so I'll leave this up here for a second. But yeah, it was a great time, and we're really just looking to get those people together that are interested in learning and growing and sharing for the greater good and have a bit of fun. We're also very excited that something I wish I could share with you more now, but we are working on bringing pieces of that ag intelligence group together there's a network of some of the best and brightest independent agronomy businesses across Western Canada that were coming together to form a larger group with a large national partner to create a firm structure. I'm very excited about that. We hope to announce more details on that in a couple of weeks at Ag in Motion. And I won't say any more than that because otherwise I'll probably get in trouble. But these are some of the pieces that I think that we need to start working towards to create some of the systems, to create some of the opportunities, to figure out all those problems that Joy was sharing with us earlier. So hopefully we'll see you at the Convergence Conference. And it's really just as a wrap, just thankful for the future and the next generation. And they'll probably figure out this stuff a lot better than we will. And, you know, for us, we really don't want to just feed the world. We want to help transform it and change it. And I think we need to do that together. AI is a big thing. We were playing around this morning with the future of agriculture. And this is a little bit what the future looks like in my mind. I think that in the future, we're going to see fields go back to what they looked like before we got here. And there'll be maybe different crops growing on the hilltops and the side slopes and different varieties of crops and trees or whatever. And AI didn't get it quite exactly right like I had in my mind. But we've gone to this broad acre, huge equipment because of the lack of labor. And in the future with robotics and autonomy, we can put a different crop on the sanding oil, or we can put an intercrop or a relay crop, or there's just going to be things that we can do with smaller equipment and technology and robotics and this will take a while. It won't be next year, but I think we're going to go back to where, you know, planting the same crop across a 600-acre field through all the ditches and valleys and stuff actually isn't the most efficient way to do things. So that's a little bit about the future that I see. I'm really excited for you guys to hear from the young farmers just playing around with AI. This is what a photo of a young, very good-looking German man who's super intelligent, helping farmers with data and technology. So Leon's going to be on the panel here later with my son Holden, and he's an import from Germany that we've had on the farm working with us around technology. Met him through the AgriBenchmark group, and it's been super fun. He's going to go check out the Stampede before he goes home. He's been with us for 3 months, and he's leaving in a couple of days, so we'll miss him. But thanks for your time, everyone, today. And I think our futures fit together, and it's part of our job to help bridge those gaps between agriculture, food, and the health of our planet. So with that, I think we got some Q&A.
Got a question right here.
Hi. I know you said the word a few times, but I'm wondering if you have any insight on how much fun comes into the play of future of farming.
How much fun?
Yeah, because you mentioned that you have fun. You mentioned earlier that you'd rather be farming as opposed to doing the other things because it was more fun. Even when you were talking about the conference, you're like, we'll have some fun. I'm curious how much you think fun needs to kind of have more of a place in farming, in the future of farming, and where that goes.
Well, that's actually a really good question. I mean, I hope it's a lot of fun. Otherwise, who would want to do it, right? And I think we know that human resources and labor is going to be an issue in every industry. And it's going to be a super big issue in agriculture if we don't open our minds to the fact that someone from the city or someone not from the farm could actually be very valuable to the farm. And I have a bit of my own personal beef or bee in my bonnet around the kind of the perception of what an ag career is. Because we have some really smart, amazing people on our farm, and we pay them very well, and we have an amazing culture, and we have a lot of fun. And I think that we need to tell a better story about the opportunities in agriculture. Not all the kids are coming back to the farm, and that's partly our own fault because I mean, my dad told me not to go to the farm, right? He lived through some tougher times in agriculture, but I think we need to embrace the things that we need to do, and I think some engineer from Germany or India can bring a lot more value to the farm, or some data geek or whatever it may be. There's a lot of talent and knowledge that we need to bring into agriculture that doesn't exist today. So we need to have our minds open to that.
Hi there. So one of the lingering questions I had from Joy's presentation was, how do we increase that technology adoption rate? And so when I saw your table comparing a great farmer against a good farmer and the decisions that they're making and how they're being proactive, they're testing their fields more often, making more data-driven decisions, my thought went to, what is causing that shift? Like what caused that shift to testing more often and using data? So I'd love to know if you have any insights on, just the general behavioral differences or what drove that shift for those individuals that are considered great farmers, to get them to that point. Because my thought goes to, they're likely more open to adopting technology if they haven't already adopted it.
Yeah, great question. I think there's always those innovators and adopters in every industry, and it's the same with agriculture, right? And there's also those that have always done it the same way. I also think that challenges and tighter margins and stuff force or create innovation. A lot of times you'll see in areas of the geography that do a little bit better in farming, there's actually not as much innovation because they don't have to, right? But I think that one of the key things is to show the use case. Farmers are smart and we're good business people. If you can show me that something's gonna make sense, we do it. If you can show me, hey, you buy sectional control and you're gonna save 10% and it costs you $50,000, you're gonna save $100,000, I'm gonna do it. It's pretty simple, and we haven't done the best of sharing that and collecting the data, but when we do, there's some very specific things that, hey, this makes sense, and it makes money, and it's better for the environment, those kind of things, then it will be adopted much quicker. And this is the reason that we need to kind of work together a little bit for the greater good, because we're all trying to solve the same problems, and we'll just get there 10 times faster if we do it together, I believe.
Terry, kind of building off that, when you look at new technology on your farm, whether that's software or equipment, are you the one, as the owner-operator, searching that out? Has your operation got to a certain stage where there's people on the farm that are bringing these solutions to you? Is it a little bit of both, I guess? How do you find out about these new technologies and look into them and figure out if they're going to work on your operation?
Yeah, great question. I think initially I was kind of the geek, and I did a lot of that stuff myself because I just was curious and I wanted to learn, but I'm not a very good geek anymore. But I learned quickly in running the consulting business that was like one of my passions. And so we purposely search out other really geeky or passionate people that are really good at stuff. And so, we've learned a whole bunch of stuff from Leanne. We work with Taylor Phillips from Producer's Edge, who's just a wizard in figuring out a lot of these widgets and dashboards. We work with Kevin Shear with the imagery. He used to be a forensic crime scene investigator with RCMP using drones, and now he just plays around with crazy stuff in the field in agriculture. And so I think just we've always had an abundance mindset of learning and sharing with others, and I don't even know most of this stuff that they're doing. We want to figure out this problem, and somebody else can figure it out better than we can. But that is a big challenge, is there's no geek squad of agriculture. I mean, Olds College has the tech agronomist program going now, which is amazing, and we've hired a couple of their students out of that program for the farm that have done some of this stuff for us too. I think that's a great start, but there's not a lot of formal structure yet around bringing this kind of data into agriculture. Farms don't think about how much of your budget are you investing into your R&D every year? You know, there should be and probably needs to be a data analysis and technology role. That's what we're working on with Leon, is we've kind of identified we need to have this role within the farm. We're kind of trying to define the parameters around what that looks like and what they'd be doing. And the problem is everyone else is too busy driving tractors and doing other fun stuff that we want to do. So it's been a cool experience to have Leon on the farm this year. Is basically your only job is just to figure out all the data messes that we have and see if you can get this stuff to work. And yeah, he's talking to me about how they were putting that stuff together, and he's like, well, you just got to take this and put it into ChatGPT and then put it into Python. I'm like, well, we don't have Pythons on the farm at, you know, in Saskatchewan. But you know, it's just some software, of course. But yeah, just working with people in those areas of passion. And so there's a lot of data and data analysis that doesn't exist in agriculture that we need to start bringing in.
Question over here.
Maybe a follow-up question on that. Like I found your presentation really interesting, especially when you were looking at the labor in your farm and you were breaking down the hours. But I'm also really curious about the future organizational structure of a farm. We talk a lot about a farm and a family farm in a very generic term, but the structure you're describing seem to be much more complex and may reflect, you know, divisions of labors that are much more formal going forward. And it may also consider things of off-farm labor that may not be family-oriented as well. Any thoughts around those kind of trends and things that you may have seen on that format?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that we've adopted in the last few years in our farm and in all of our businesses is a program called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's just a business system to maximize the human labor in your business, and provides you very simple structure around org charts, accountability. I'm the visionary of the farm. We have an integrator, an operations manager, finance and accounting manager. They're all people that would work on your farm, but we have more formal structure there, which I think is critically important, especially as farms grow and evolve. And even if you have a little bit of a smaller farm, with that, we have a really clearly defined core values of the farm and a vision and a mission of where we're going and what's important. So one of our farm values is family first. And so we can still put structure into a business and keep some of those values if that's what's important. So when someone's kid gets sick or something happens, like, they just go. That's part of our values and what we value. So yeah, it's not easy. I also think that's one of farm's biggest challenges, is we've come from this history of rugged individualism, just do it yourself. I used to brag about running a 24-hour shift on the cedar without sleeping. Now I realize it's just stupid and not very safe. So yeah, I think that generally speaking, and I don't want to say this about all farms because there's some farms that are doing an amazing job, but we can have the expectation that the next generation is going to work the way our fathers did, or maybe even we did. I mean, my dad is, you know, still won't stop working even though we try to make him stop. But that's just part of the way it is. So we have shifts. We do run 24-hour shifts at seeding, which is actually easier than not, because we don't have people trying to run 16 or 18 hours and feeling stressed because the rain is coming and they got to shut the tractor down. Our team gets 1 day off a week, even in the middle of seeding. We have spray shifts through the summer where guys get 3 or 4 days off, much like a mine shift. And at harvest last year, everyone had 2 days off. And it's pretty hard to get your head around that, but we were burning people out. No one wants to work 300 or 400 hours a month anymore, and that's just not reasonable. So we need to find different ways to go about things. We need to create more formal and professional structure and management, and when we do, it actually, you get to live that quality quality of life and the family farm values better than we did before.
We have a question up here.
Thanks, Terry. Great presentation. You mentioned that ranchers cull their herds and maybe farmers should look at culling their acres. Obviously, some of those acres can be rehabilitated instead of being sold in the wintertime. So what are the key pieces of information that would be needed in order to determine whether an acre can be rehabilitated versus retired?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, we haven't sold or got rid of any land, so just so you know. But just understand, well, yield. The yield is one thing, and this, like the soil type or what the issue is. Normally, it is around soil type, but it's either salinity or sand or something like that in our area, anyways. So, and generally speaking, there is crops like hay is probably one of the best ones, salt tolerant hay, that you can convert that to. We've converted about 200 acres out of our farm in different patches and areas into that. But it depends a little bit on the situation. That's a typical agronomist response. But yeah, just if you have the yield data, gross margin, you know, and the total profit of an individual field or that area, then you can figure it out from there. So it's, I mean, for the most part, a lot of those areas, the crop doesn't grow. I mean, in some of those really saline areas, the other thing that we've seen, like we have some land along the number 16 highway, and there's that 50 or 100 feet along the highway that's probably get also drainage issues and road salt from the winter time. It doesn't grow anything. Literally doesn't grow except for kochia and thistle and foxtail barley. And so you see that couple 100 feet or 100 feet down into hay, and then you have nice, amazing crop right up to the edge and no weeds, and some of it isn't, you know, it isn't too complicated.
Another question over here.
Yeah, Terry, I'd like to take you back to the question about how do we expose kids that might be growing up in, say, Yonge and Finch or in Burnaby about the opportunities in agriculture. How do we, as more people are living in the cities, your thoughts on, and this would probably be at the junior high school level.
Well, I think ag in the classroom is definitely one of those things, and something that we probably need to get more supportive of. I think just telling that story, getting more people involved. I think it's partly our own mindsets. You know, how many farms are open or would embrace bringing someone into the farm that's not from the farm or from this country or whatever that may be, right? And so I think it's a little bit of a lot of things. But there's a program that we've been learning a little bit more about called Palette Skills, where they're actually trying to retrain people specifically for technology skills in agriculture. They've identified a gap, and these are like PhD and masters from India or wherever that are incredibly brilliant, smart, educated people that have come to Canada, but they don't, you know, they maybe need just a little bit of training to understand the agriculture market and how to apply their skills into some of what we need. So there's things that we just need to start looking at more differently, and as the industry, we need to be open to embracing that. And I'm not sure we've done the best job of that yet.
I think that's it for questions.
Thanks a lot.
I'm very excited about this next part. It is a panel of 4, as you can see, next generation producers. We are going to talk about the types of innovations they want to introduce to their farms, the type of innovations maybe they already have introduced to their farms, and some of the things that they need from us as an industry, as a collective, to support them as they move forward into the next generation and into the future of agriculture. So with that, I'm very proud to introduce Bryce McKenzie. He's our Director of Strategy here at AdFarm. He's going to be moderating our panel today. Please join me in giving them a very warm welcome.
Thanks, Nicole. As Nicole mentioned, I'm Bryce McKenzie, and I'm thrilled to be sharing the stage today with 4 of our next generation producers, and I'm gonna let these guys do the majority of the talking today. So maybe just to get us started, I will go through kind of one by one and have you guys just quickly introduce yourselves, give a little background who you are, kind of where you're at in your farm career, and anything else you want to share. So Leon, maybe we'll start with you down at the end.
Thank you, Bryce. Leon Ransch, 23 years old, and I'm a young farmer from Germany, probably taking over in about 10 years. My father is still young. And I just finished I'm about to graduate in agribusiness, and I'm doing an internship here at Terry Aberhart Aberhart Farms. And I wanted to reveal in this time now here, finishing my studies, a little bit the secrets of prairie farming, to know what you are doing in this wild west, in this Western freedom. What we Europeans may do if we would have all that choices.
Thanks, Leon. Holden?
Yeah, I'm Holden. I'm 17, just going into grade 12. So my plans after school are to go into agribusiness at the U of S, hopefully somewhere. And then probably take over the farm after Dad retires sometime. And yeah, right now I just mostly do labor, getting into more of the agronomy slowly, but still learning.
Perfect, thank you. Quinn?
Hi, everybody. My name's Quinn Sawyer. I'm a 5th generation farmer from Agnew, Alberta, so super small town. I'm just finishing up my precision agronomy diploma at Olds College, and I've loved it so far. Basically, Dr. Agnew. My apologies. Her presentation kind of outlined my whole course. So I'm really excited to to talk about what I thought of it, what my thoughts were, and how I can bring some of this fun new technology home.
Thank you. Ellie?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ellie Stauffer. I'm originally from a cattle and grain operation in Pincher Creek, Alberta, so that's about 2 hours south of here. So I've grown up loving everything agriculture, being involved in programs like 4-H, and then I recently just graduated with my Bachelor of Science in Agriculture Business from the University of Saskatchewan, and I'm at home full-time now, starting to kind of look into that process of succession planning, and it's absolutely terrifying, but I'm very excited to be here today already with the excellent speakers already. It's already inspiring me quite a bit, so that's a pretty cool feeling to be leaving here eventually by. So yeah, very excited to be here.
Thank you all, and thank you all for lending your time to take part in this today. So I'll get us started by, we heard a lot of presentations today already about the future of agriculture and what that future potentially looks like, and a lot of that is gonna be, handed over to your guys' generation. We're thinking 10, 20, 30 years down the road, the type of technology that's gonna be available on farms. So when you look at all that technology, what would you say excites you the most about what potential's out there for agriculture in the future? And Ellie, if you don't mind, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously we covered, there's quite a lot of it just based on even the speakers today. But I'd say what excites me the most is that it really has the potential to tackle any issue that we're looking at that are kind of those big, I guess you could call it trigger words nowadays, and the pillars that we always talk about in agriculture of sustainability, and that's environmental, economical, and social, whether it's precision farming practices that and technology that will help us get better yields on the farm and utilize our environment better and in a more sustainable way. And then, we also touched a little bit on potentially in social issues like labor shortages. And if technology can help us work towards combating all of those problems, that's pretty exciting for me.
Quinn, how about for you?
Yeah, kind of piggybacking on what Ellie said. I think nowadays farmers, producers across the world are challenged with trying to get the crop in with increased input costs, and as well as some governmental barriers. And I think if there's a way that we can sustainably farm and get the crop in the ground easier with less hassle, then I'm all for it. So.
Holden, how about you?
You can tell they went to college. They said a lot of big words. Yeah, pretty much everything that they said, because that sounded good. But for me, when I think about what I want to improve on my farm, I more think of what is going to help the laborers do their jobs better, faster, cheaper. So, like with the precision AI and like spraying and applications like that help with cost of chemical and all that kind of more technology use and AI stuff. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I liked hearing that from Joy about the labor piece, about how we're not going to be replaced by robots or AI. I said that for farmers. She didn't say it for marketers, so I don't know. Hopefully that's the same case. Leon, how about for you? What are you most excited about?
For me, I'm most excited about, I think it's on the one hand like seeing that I really can manage like my landscape around what is happening, what is affecting all of us in terms of the environment. Secondly, I think it's probably like for a good purpose. I believe producing food has definitely its relevance and will be relevant for all of us. And lastly, I try to conserve probably like the home farm. Like in the end, I think that's like keeping a family farm running and having so many people and affected by that. Like also Terry uses family first. I think that's a pretty big aim also from my side to keep it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's an important element that we want to carry as we move through this next technological evolution, that family component of agriculture stays there, because that's an important part for everyone that's in it. Next, we talk about opportunities, and in the future, next into kind of the challenges that you see for your generation and things that you could see when you do, take over the farm operation. What do you see on the horizon that might be some new challenges, maybe that, previous generations didn't see before? Leon, maybe I'll start at the end with you if you want to kick us off.
Well, I think if you would ask a young farmer in Germany, and especially in my program, it started that more and more people also out of agriculture started studying, they would say that they just could not start because the interest rates, or especially like land prices, would be that high. I think that's the highest burden probably. Like I'm very privileged, like having this background coming from a farm. I think it's about the timing probably. If you would have started farming in Canada in the 1970s, probably you would have said exactly the same words as I'm saying now 50 years later. I believe it could be waiting maybe that it will get easier to start as a young farmer, but I think you need the privilege of coming from a farm at this time to really start. That's a big burden, and I don't know how to solve that, of course.
Mm-hmm. Waiting. Holden?
I think one of the biggest challenges for people like my age that maybe want to start a farm or get into farming is the fact that it is super difficult, especially if you don't come from a family farm. And in my generation, there's not a lot of interest in farming because not a lot of people think of sitting in a tractor or sitting in a combine going up and down the field all day is really that fun. But what they don't realize is that it's a lot more. Like you can have a job in agriculture and not touch a piece of equipment at all, and people don't realize that. And really, it's just interest, and people don't want to take the time to learn and focus on what it actually can come down to as a career for them. And I just think people need to do that more.
You're jumping to another topic of questions too we're going to have around that about attracting them, but I do see that as a big challenge too, is off-farm young people. How do we get them attracted to the industry, because we need their minds and their skill set in our industry too. Quinn, how about for you?
Yeah, I think that not to jump ahead to one of your other questions, but I think that like Holden said, there's more to farming than just having your boots on the ground. There's different jobs. There's finance jobs, communications jobs. There's more to farming than just playing in the dirt. So yeah, I think if we can attract that younger generation and show them there's more to that, then I think that'd be great.
Ellie?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what everyone has said up here. Kind of taking it a little bit of a different route. I think one of the greatest challenges that we face a little bit is a little bit of that battle between science and the practices that we use on the farm versus some of the misinformation that we see amongst consumers and the public in general, and to no fault of their own. We've kind of talked a little bit about how we haven't been the best for advocating for ourselves, but kind of the consequences of that, and I think we are starting to see it a little bit, is that sometimes policy and stuff we see coming from the government can inhibit, I think, what we're trying to do in agriculture in general. Just as a quick example off the top of my head of something recently was a couple years ago when it was kind of proposed by Health Canada to put warning labels on ground meat. And this caused a little bit of an uproar in the ag sector just because there was just some pretty shaky science behind it. And unfortunately, we're just starting to see situations like this where maybe some of these decisions might be influenced more by social trends and misinformation than the actual facts. And as a young farmer, sometimes that scares me a little because you want to be able to operate and do the best that you absolutely can, but sometimes those sorts of regulations can inhibit you a little bit. So just a little bit of a different route, but definitely a challenge I foresee in the future.
Yeah. No, I think that'll be really important too, especially today. Like we talk about all that different technology that's coming to agriculture, and it's really exciting for us, but oftentimes we forget about that consumer too. We got to bring them along in that story too. And we saw that, knowledge gap between the technology that's there and farmers adopting it, and that gap's going to exist and continue to widen too with the consumers if we're not focused there. So, well, I'll jump in the next question. So we kind of talked about a lot of challenges. I don't think we're going to solve all the challenges, but one, when we talked about attracting that next generation to agriculture, can you guys talk about, what you think, your generation can do to talk to, your cohort, people that you grew up with about agriculture, and how you could potentially attract them, or any stories using social media, any success stories that you've seen of bringing people into agriculture? Ellie, I'll start with you.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the biggest things to reiterate a little bit is having the mindset that it's not necessarily about educating people about agriculture. It's about more so inviting them into it. I think that from my experience, any time that I think I've had a very positive social interaction with somebody from outside of agriculture has typically been when they've approached me in some way and have asked questions and have shown that interest. And that's where you kind of latch on a little bit and, talk to them and tell them as much as you can. So I think in general, in terms of attracting more people into agriculture, that route of hands-on opportunities, whether that's farm tours or discussions like this, that afterwards you can talk to people about what are things that you discussed up on this stage, those sorts of interactions that promote questions and promote interest is probably the best way in order to attract people into agriculture.
How about you, Quinn?
Yeah, I totally agree with Ellie. Yeah, I mean, whether you're at the Stampede or just running errands in town and you're dressed in boots, or you're covered in mud or something like that, and somebody says, "What's going on there? Like, what do you do?" And you're able to take that time to spread some knowledge to maybe somebody from the city who doesn't know how their food comes on their table, or how the bread's made, or how they're cooking their steaks at night. Yeah, I think there's just a lot of talk that could be happening, and I think it also, it's more than just educating, but it also would help to get more egg in the classroom. Like even being from a small town, there's immigrants that move into small towns. That's happening a lot in Acme, as well as people moving from the city coming to Acme. Just being from a small town doesn't mean you know everything about farming. So I think egg in the classroom is a big thing that I haven't seen happen as much these days.
I think we have ag in the classroom in the room, so I'm sure they're happy. They're getting multiple plugs at tonight's event. Holden?
Yeah, what they said was really good, and I think it's more about trying to expose people to agriculture instead of try and, force feed them what we do and like all that stuff. Because what I've learned from talking to my friends, and I'm from Langeberg, Saskatchewan, small town, and what I've learned is that, to be honest, people find farming boring. And, fair enough, nobody really wants to hear about, how long you spent in the tractor, because that doesn't sound very fun. And nobody wants to hear about how when your combine broke down and all this stuff. But what we need to show them is what farming can bring to everybody's life and how it affects them. Because people take it for granted. People don't realize that, the guy that sits in the combine for 12 hours a day is what gives you your bread in the grocery store. Like, nobody understands that. There's no connection. People aren't building the bridges there. And that's just, it's something that people don't want to take the time to learn, especially at my age, because nobody has an attention span. And if it's not in a cool video on YouTube, they don't like it. So, but yeah, I think it's more about just giving people the opportunity to learn if they want to. And, just giving them the information, but not trying to because people like to have their own opinion, and if you try and tell them what they should know, doesn't work very well. Yeah.
Leon, how about for you? I know you might have a bit of a different perspective too of being able to know kind of your younger generation, both in Germany and in Canada, and yeah, would love to hear your thoughts on how we can do a better job of telling the story.
Telling the story of getting a job in agriculture.
Yeah, getting young people into agriculture.
We would in Europe probably say it would be exposition, as you also discussed now about. But if I turn on the radio on Highway 16, I will hear the latest news in agriculture. So you've got pretty good job probably in exposition to people in Saskatchewan that we might not have in Europe. I think we have to understand it's just a hard fact probably that jobs in agriculture, there will be less jobs, or they always went down, and in the total amount of jobs went down. Like in Europe, it's just in Germany, it's 1.3% of the population that is involved in the agricultural sector, and how big is the share of farmers of that? So I think if we want to compete or if we want to be good in that market, probably we also have to work a lot on the hard facts probably about that. We tried it here in the farm where I was working with a shift system during seeding, what made really the work a lot better. And if that's clearly communicated to people, then I believe also Generation Z, my generation, would tell that this that would be a good place to work. And especially if you can see you're working outside in the nature, there are so many beneficial factors around that would contribute for working on agriculture, also why I chose it, that I believe if we can manage to change those hard facts and working to it, then probably we do already a good job on that.
Thanks for that, Leon. Yeah, and as we jump into the next question too, and Leon, I'll maybe start with you again when we get going on this one. It's around just kind of the misconceptions in ag, and kind of maybe from each of your perspective, and your experience, what do you see as kind of some of the biggest misconceptions, whether it's in ranching or farming that you've seen? And Leon, I'm also just interested to hear your perspective as well on maybe some misconceptions you had about Canadian agriculture, or maybe an idea in your mind about how agriculture works in Canada, and maybe some things that you learned now that you've been here and working on Terry's farm.
Yeah, I believe in Europe we probably, or we in Germany probably, especially maybe might have the stereotype of being very precise in most things that we would do. Our discussions in farming are about how can we plant wheat currently or barley in singulation out on our fields? How can we have the perfect seedbed? How can we improve the timing? And if I see how we are doing direct tillage here, it would be hard to understand how that might work in Europe, but still I see there's a great crop growing, there are good gross margins. It's another reality probably that is happening here compared to the one that we are having in Europe. I believe the precision on that size is probably incredible to see, and that's a thing that I will take definitely home. How to make so many decisions at one time by leveraging them, like by leveraging this data and getting a better decision. And I think there we can probably take a lot, or I will take a lot home from this farm, from Terry. I think that's my learning using that.
You guys sell a lot of cars here based on precision, so don't destroy that brand. Yeah. Holden, how about for you?
I think a lot of people don't realize that farming isn't just, getting your boots in the dirt and, planting seeds and harvesting. That's the main part of it because that's what it was built on, but it's grown so much and people don't realize the fact that, like I said earlier, like you can work on a farm and be involved in agriculture and don't have to do anything dirty, I guess, or get your hands dirty. But people, I think, like a big misconception is people don't want to work on a farm because they don't want to sit in a tractor all day or they don't want to sit in a combine all day. But people don't realize that you can sit in an office, in a cozy office all day if you want, sipping coffee at 10 a.m. and going for hour-long lunch breaks at McDonald's down the street if you want. And you can be just as involved in agriculture as the next guy. So,
Quinn, how about for you?
Yeah, I think that I think the people in this room are probably pretty well informed now about the effects, the positive effects that precision farming can have, and I think that a big misconception is that people don't realize the steps that we're taking in order to produce crops, and whether you're producing crops or ranching, they don't realize the steps that we're taking to produce the most amount of food with the same amount of land or less land, and they don't realize that we're not just destroying the environment, and I think that's a big misconception.
Ellie?
Yeah, definitely on that last point you said about we're not there to destroy the environment. That's a big one, especially like I come from mostly a ranching background, and I think many of us in this room have probably heard the misconceptions in terms of cattle and their effect on the environment and greenhouse gases. And I'm not here to say, oh, none of that is true, but it's having the solid science and understanding the science behind it is incredibly important. And so misconceptions like that really come from the fact that, there's that lack of realizing that we all share the same values. So consumer may be really concerned about cattle ranching, not realizing that the amount of shared concern over managing pastures effectively, managing the herd health effectively, feeding the proper rations, and really everything that goes into it that addresses a lot of those concerns that are behind a lot of those misconceptions. And so, really trying to push that story that we all share the same values and we're working towards the same goals, because at the end of the day, that's kind of what we're doing, and that's where a bit of that divide is.
No, I think that's really exciting, and Terry was talking about some of the work that he's doing as well to, now that we have this data and technology, to be able to tell that story more fully to consumers, I think will be great. I'm going to do one more kind of group question here, and then I'm going to do some one-on-one discussion here. But the last one to kind of wrap us up for this portion anyway is just kind of tell me, maybe out of all the support and resources that you've had, what has been most beneficial? I know some of you have been involved in 4-H. You obviously grew up on a family farm. Some of you have gone to post-secondary. Any mentors? Kind of who in your life has, I guess, or what portion of your life has kind of helped you the most as you look to get back to the family farm and potentially take over the operation? Ellie, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that program that has probably been the most beneficial to me has been 4-H. I was a member for 8 years, and it was a huge part of my life in terms of skill building, public speaking, decision making, and then on a larger and probably more important scale, I'm finding is the friends and connections that I made through that. You know, it starts as kids you meet at summer camp, and then all of a sudden I'm going to university with them, and now graduating university, they're the people that I call because they're all a part of different sectors of the industry. So it's become such a wealth of knowledge and just resources all across the country just from starting out in 4-H, honestly. So that's probably had the most influence over my life, was the opportunity to be a part of a program like that.
And sharpen your public speaking skills, which they're on display.
Still working on it.
No, it's awesome. Quinn, how about for you?
Yeah, I think that for me, I mean, yeah, farming I think is more than just a lifestyle. I think it's a way of life, and it's something that's passed down from generation to generation. And you know, from great grandpas to dads. Basically, for me, you know, when I was born, my first breath was a farmer, and I started learning things, and my whole life until I take my last breath, I'll be learning new things about farming. So the mentorship from my dad and mom and 4-H as a whole has been huge. I mean, I think kind of going back to that other question you asked earlier, it would be incredibly hard, I think, for a guy just to decide that he wants to start farming, because you're missing out on years or decades of that knowledge that's been passed down. So yeah, I think just growing up on a family farm and having that mentorship from neighbors and brothers and stuff has been huge.
Thanks, Quinn. Holden, I'm gonna maybe say your dad, but if you want to say somebody else, go ahead.
Yeah. My dad was definitely a big part. All of my family was. For me, I notice I get lots of support from my community. Like when I'm walking down the halls in school, there's always, you know, there's so many farm kids when you live in a small town, but even the people that live in town, my friends, they ask me, you know, how's harvest going, or how is seeding, you know, all that stuff. How's it looking? And to me, it's kind of heartwarming, because it's like, even though these people have nothing to do with it, they still care, and they still like want to show support, and that they like kind of have interest in it. So that makes me happy. But yeah, my family definitely plays a big role. Got a big family. You know, I got 4 sisters and a brother, so they definitely help a lot with, you know, on the farm and just being a good support system.
Leon, how about for you?
For me, it's probably the time during university and the friendships that I could build at this time, where I'm still visiting everyone very closely. Like when there is time, then I would always travel to them and ask and use their support system in that moment to learn from them and use that as well.
Yeah. Thanks, you guys. So next we're gonna kind of go a little bit one-on-one with each of you and just have some more specific questions. You kind of already answered this first one, Ellie, about 4-H, so maybe I'll move on to the next one. So on your family farm, you guys are both involved in the cattle and the grain side of the business. Is there one side of the business that you're more kind of keen on or interested in expanding on or learning more, or do you like the mix of both?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's pretty awesome and definitely a privilege to have a bit of involvement in both. And that's something that I always find is that, you know, you might work in the wind and snow moving cows, and then getting to switch to a nice air-conditioned cab is pretty nice sometimes. But despite that, I'd say I definitely have a stronger passion for the cattle side of things. And, you know, I talked a little bit about before, but pasture management, herd health, and that's definitely a little bit more where my passion lies. And and definitely still, what's interesting in having both is that you can kind of integrate both systems, you know, using manure to put onto your fields, and different sort of integration techniques that you can use in having both on the go, which I personally like exploring a little bit, and I'd like to explore further just, for efficiency purposes. And we talked a lot about data collection today, obviously, and I'd really like to learn more and more how I can integrate those sorts of systems into my family operation. So hey, there's an adoption technique right there. I'm ready to adopt. But yeah, so I'd say I really enjoy aspects of both grain and cattle farming, but definitely my heart lies a little bit with the cattle more.
It does get to be a bit of more of an emotional business, I find. I think we same thing growing up, had cattle, but yeah, I don't know if you guys got attached to your 4-H steers in Beef Club, but there was definitely a couple of years where it was a little hard to say goodbye to them at the end of the year. Holden, maybe for you, we got a glimpse of your family farm operation from your dad when he presented, and there was a mind map with 1 million different jobs to be done on a farm operation. So when you look at that or your day-to-day on the farm, is there, certain areas that you enjoy more than the others? Do you like being in the cab of a combine or a sprayer, or do you like being behind the computer? Or where do you see kind of your niche or your areas that you want to explore further?
Well, for me, when I wake up in the morning, every day is kind of a mystery when I step out of the house. So, I do really enjoy, being in the cab. My favorite part of the farm is seeding. I like being in the tractor and seeding and stuff, because then I can drive past the fields and scout them and know that, oh, there's a corner missing there. But no, it's good. And just seeing the plants grow, because we don't do cattle, we're just grain, but seeing all the plants grow in the fields, looking good, more towards fall and stuff. It's just, you kind of get that feeling of pride, so you put in the work to do that. But I like running the machinery lots. Big machinery makes me feel cool, boosts my ego. And yeah, I do a little bit of, actually, never mind, I don't do anything with the computers, really. That's a lie, but that's what Leon does, but he tried to show me, but I don't know. But yeah, mostly just machinery and, just things around the yard, stuff like that. That's what I like to do.
Awesome. Leon, question for you. So, as we all know at this point, you're visiting from Germany. So, how did you land on Canada as a place that you wanted to come and learn more about agriculture, out of all the countries in the world that, have an agriculture industry within it? What drew you to Canada? And I guess for us too, how did you end up on Terry's farm?
So the background actually to Terry was, I'm doing an assistant researcher job for a German institute, and we wrote a paper about site-specific fertilizer application and checked out how much is actually the monetary cost benefit of that when you compare two farms. And we had the nice opportunity that Terry just had the data for another farm that they started afterwards, also managing variable rate. And so we took this as a case study and observed it on a 3-year basis. And that was what we were always writing and talking about in Germany. And I thought, now that I'm finishing my studies, I really want to see what I was actually writing there the whole time about. So that was the reason coming to Terry Aberhart. At the same time, I would always say, Canada we are on the exact same latitude like my farm at home. We have the same crop cycle. We have kind of similar machinery, maybe no-till, that's like a ghost in Europe. Some farmers try to adopt already, but most of them don't, because we love our precision. And we don't trust in it too much. Farming is very conservative in Europe, and especially we Europeans try to keep it also with small farms, having a lot of subsidies, or closing sugar beet market currently. That's something probably very special, keeping our farming structure. But I wanted to learn how does it work in an open world when you don't have those legislations and those subsidies. And this opportunity, I think I saw in this Wild West probably. Safer than going to Argentina or to Chile, but still free. That's the point.
That's good. Quinn, for you, you're completed your degree or diploma at Olds College. I know you're talking about pursuing your degree potentially this fall. So when you look back at your education thus far, is there one piece of technology that you've learned about that you're keen to get implemented on your family farm? Is there something that you've been bugging your mom and dad about since you've been educated at Olds College? And yeah, anything in particular that stands out?
Well, I think I know on our farm we've been really using the John Deere Op Center a lot. That's been really great. Being able to see the fuel levels of the combines, where they're at, what field. It's really a great tool for my mom and my grandma because they're out trying to deliver meals and they don't really know where to go, and so they can just hop on their phone and take the directions. They know which combine is dad's or grandpa's or whoever. So that's been really, really nice. But the technology that I thought would be really great to bring home is all the drone technology. I have a drone, and it's been great for scouting crops. Being able to send it up in the air without driving in the field and go see a big patch of kochia has been really great. And I guess that being said, I think I'd like to take home one of those big DJI Agris 240 drones. Those are the spraying drones. And I think that'd be great at home instead of dad sending me out on a mower with a mask, going out into the middle of the field and getting all green, and I'm going to the bathroom green, and I got green in my teeth and my eyes and my ears. I think being able to send out a drone and spray that big patch of kochia would be great. Yeah, so if I could somehow implement that on the farm, that would be really great. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. So next little round of questioning here before we go into audience Q&A is we're in a group, a lot of us are marketers, Ad Farm's a marketing agency, so I'm going to ask you some marketing questions because we're going to mine you for knowledge while you're here. How do you guys stay up to date with anything with agriculture? You know, are you still opening up the Western Producer, maybe like your parents were, and reading print publications? Or are you finding these things out online? Are you still, going to trade shows? What are the best probably communication channels for your generation if you want to learn about new products or software or technology? Ellie, I'll start with you.
I mean, I would love to say that I'm keeping up with publications. I did open the Western Producer the other day, actually, but that's a pretty rare occasion for me. In all truthfulness, I feel like the best way to get information on what's happening, what technology is coming down the drain, what spray to use, just everything is coming from the people we're using as advisors, whether that's agronomists or neighbors or, I think, it's a simple answer, but I think the egg industry has always been pretty simple in the matter of face-to-face and relationship marketing is always what's going to get through to me. Hearing recommendations from other people, hearing actual stories of what's going on. That's, it might take a little bit more investment and obviously time, but I don't necessarily trust everything I see on social media, and I'm not always opening my emails, and it's hard to get to reading the Western Producer all the time. And so I think the bottom line is those relationships are probably what's getting information to me, and that's where I'm looking to hear about new things going on from somebody else.
Young people are inundated and busy. I had trouble getting hold of Ellie a few times. So, she's got a lot going on, so yeah. Quinn, how about for you?
Yeah, I think, like Ellie said, being that I went to Olds College and being in the Precision Ag program, there's so many great professors there, and being able to jump on a Teams video call with them or a phone call or communicating via email has been huge. They can tell you what's going on, what's up to date. Especially I follow the Olds College account on Instagram. And it's really cool if you follow it. The Smart Farm's always up to something. They're always running some kind of test or showcasing some new technology. So for me, that's really where I get it. Yeah.
Holden?
I just go ask Dad. Yeah, I don't think I've ever looked at the Western Producer a day in my life. I know Dad flips open the newspaper sometimes, but I usually just go ask him or basically anybody with more knowledge than me. Somebody else higher up, I just go talk to them.
Leon?
Yeah, I probably stole the restaurant producer from the table because we in Europe still use like printed media, I think, and also especially like their online versions of that. That's what my father used, but then at the same time, the consultant probably will have the most direct impact on him in his decision-making process. I believe like I would still follow on social media all my universities and those kinds of programs from the agronomy side, and would probably hit those lines, I think, in that moment. Yeah, that might be those three areas where a European would be reached now.
Yeah. No, it's interesting, and it's to hear the perspective too about that advisor or more that one-on-one communication is more valuable to you guys than I think a lot of people's maybe initial conception with younger generations would immediately go to like social media or something like that as a way that you're finding out things and spending your time all on there. But yeah, that's interesting to hear that just actually talking to somebody is still really important in today's world. So that's good. I guess, too, when we talk about marketing and branding, you guys are involved in the agriculture space, and obviously you probably haven't been inundated from, certain brands or anything like that. But when you think about thus far in your career, is there any, agriculture brands out there? I know John Deere's been brought up a couple times. Like, who would you say is doing a good job right now, reaching that next generation producer? And yeah, any examples that you can share of, people that have done an effective job and caught your attention. Quinn, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah?
Not to say whatever, but I think John Deere is so far ahead of its time. I think they've been doing a really great job promoting new tech and getting it out there to the public and teaching you how to use it has been huge. So honestly, it's kind of a short answer, but I think John Deere is just so far ahead. There's so many different things you can look at on that ops center. You can see your fields and say what you're spraying or what you're implementing in the crop. I think that's been huge.
Holden, how about for you? Is there any companies, products, anything that's really kind of caught your eye?
John Deere's, same for me, John Deere. They post a lot on like Instagram and TikTok and stuff, and that's where I see lots of their technology, and they make really, really good videos about, like, I actually didn't even know they were coming out with a new tractor till I seen it on Instagram. So that was cool. And then I went and researched it, and then I figured it out. But yeah, I think definitely lots of the big brands like John Deere and Case and New Holland and stuff like that, they are starting to head more towards social media to get their, new products out, because everybody wants to see it in a cool video, because who watches TV commercials anymore? So yeah, I think social media is doing really good for those brands.
And John Deere's been brainwashing us since we were kids. We all had green John Deere tractors growing up, so they do a good job. Leon, how about for you? And then again, I'd love your perspective as well of, if you've noticed a change or a difference in terms of how you find out about products or services or media or brands in Canada versus Germany.
From my perspective, I always don't trust social media perfectly, because it's just the bubble where I am staying. Like, I will see road bike advertisement to buy a new bike, because I'm so much into sports, next to the John Deere tractor and next to the Fendt tractor as well, because in Europe we probably, like, Fendt and John Deere are in Germany on the same level. And so it really depends a lot on the user. And like, if you are in John Deere, then you will only get John Deere advertisement. I was pretty much impressed in Europe from Nexat, probably. That was a agricultural technology firm in Europe or in Germany in that moment, evolving also during trade fairs. and like even like small brands coming up, how quickly they can emerge and can be shown in the market. That was quite surprising that this still works, even that my algorithm is probably pretty much trained already.
Ellie, how about for you?
Oh, well, I can't say for sure that there's been, just as somebody who's grown up more on the cattle side of things, that there's been a specific equipment dealer that's really swayed me in a way that I've felt was particularly noticeable, and especially at this stage in my career. But I will say, and not to sound like a broken record on it, that relationship component is typically what is selling me and my family on a lot of the things we're doing. We deal with a lot of smaller or independent companies that are able to offer that service, that hands-on service and that relationship. And I'd say that that's the component that's going to win for me every time. So pretty simple and non-specific answer, but that's kind of where I go with it.
No. That's good to hear. I'll just wrap us up here really quick with one last question. I think I'm running over time. I'm enjoying talking to you guys, so I don't want to stop. But I do want to leave some time for any audience Q&A. So leaving words for kind of the audience on, for if there was people in here that are part of your generation or maybe even a little bit younger, kind of what would be your one piece of advice to them if they were thinking about pursuing a career in agriculture? And, we talked about the challenges already about how you kind of have to be born in it, but, there's still a lot of kids that are born on farm that spend a lot of time thinking about whether they still want to pursue agriculture as a career. So I guess for that individual, what would be your piece of advice to them to pursue an agriculture career? Ellie?
Well, for starters, there's, as everyone would know in this room, there's so much more to agriculture in addition to farming. There's so many different careers, and I think even when I was coming into university, I had no idea the extent that there was as when I left, and still I know that there's so many different jobs. And so I think my biggest piece of advice is to put yourself out there and to meet as many people as possible, because you never know. It might be somebody you talk to after this event at this reception, and they just mention on the fly about a job they used to work 2 years ago in an ag industry that you had never even heard of before, and then all of a sudden, a month later, you apply for a job in it. And so you can't discredit the wealth of knowledge in the people around you. And so putting yourself out there and meeting as many people as possible will just open so many doors for you that you could have never expected. And that's probably my biggest piece of advice. Plus, everyone in agriculture is great. The greatest friends I've ever had, greatest neighbors. And so I'll always endorse people in agriculture.
You can work in marketing in agriculture. You can sit on your ass and drink coffee at 10 o'clock in the morning. It's incredible. Yeah. Quinn?
Yeah, I totally agree with Ellie there. Yeah, it's one hell of a life. There's so many different things you can do, and I don't think it ever grows old. I don't think it ever will. I don't think it'll ever grow old for me. Yeah, there's so many different paths you can take, and yeah, like Ellie mentioned, 4-H for example. The people you meet are just incredible, and they're from all over, and yeah, the relationships that you made that you'll make are just priceless. So, yeah, I just say to anybody, any young guy that wants to get into it, then get into it, because it's an incredible way to live.
Holden?
I'd say ask a lot of questions and go to as many events as you can, like things like these or different conferences or like Ag in Motion, lots of ag shows. That's what growing up I love to do the most. Going to see all the new fancy equipment or, getting a free slushie at Ag in Motion when it's hot outside. But, just kind of, yeah, like putting yourself out there and getting all the knowledge from everybody else, because, lots of people know what they're doing out here. And lots of people have lots of experience, and just being able to connect yourself through people can help you a lot in your career. Like I know so many people in Alberta and Manitoba, that farm, and we all, get together and have meetings and just give each other help and knowledge on how they operate and how we operate and all that stuff. And it's just makes it a lot easier, because if you know what other people are doing wrong, then you know what to do right. So.
Great. Leon, how about for you?
Yeah, I also would say it's about engagement. Like if you really want to do it and want to learn it, then you can always get yourself into that business and get it somehow going and go into some kind of a position where you can work with agriculture. Really, it's or you have it like from the heritage. You marry good, or maybe. But I think it's more the engagement, probably. Yeah.
No, I think you guys made some good points, especially about the engagement and the tight-knit community nature. You can just call people that you've never met before in actual real life and invite them to come and join a panel discussion, and they're willing to do it, which you don't get in every industry. So thank you guys again for lending your time to do this. We have about 7 to 10 minutes left for any audience Q&A. So if there's any questions for any of our panelists from the audience, mic runners, online, there's an Ask a Question button if there's any questions online. I'll have to trust you because I cannot see anything.
I just couldn't let it go that no one was going to ask a question, so I'm not sure if it's a question, more of a comment. First of all, it's deja vu because I see Ellie Stommer's parents sitting in front of me, and I don't know how many times we've been at 4-H public speaking between you and Emmett on a stage sitting near each other, and now you're next to his brother. First of all, I want to thank you all for giving us your perspective. Most of us are in this room are either, we're connected because we're agriculture. We've been asking you about young people and how to get them involved. And I know a lot of you have talked about your cohorts, but I didn't hear, and I'm just curious, are all, I know a lot of you have, your connections are, your friends are from a farm, so that's where they're agriculture, but I'm just curious, and maybe it's a little tougher, Holden, because you're in high school, but actually no, it's not, because not everyone's an ag. How many of your friends, do you have who are outside of agriculture? Do you have a pretty large group of that as well, who are you able to have these conversations? Because you've talked about trying to connect with people. So how have you tried to connect with those peers, whether it's at school or, 4-H ends, and so I'm just curious, aside from your friends who are already in agriculture, for mentorship or perspectives or to teach them, do you have any that are outside of that? Non-farm kids?
That's actually an awesome question. And a couple of months ago, my friends that are in agriculture and I were discussing that. And it's something that admittedly I'm not very good at. I have been very passionate about agriculture, and I kind of a beeline down that route of meeting as many people within the industry as possible. But you are exactly right. It's something that is now a little bit of a goal of mine to reach out more, because I think we all do it a little bit as human nature. You kind of attract to people who are like you. And I'll be the first to admit that, besides a lot of my friends in high school, who I do still like to keep contact with, I have kind of beeline down the agriculture route. And it's something that from here on out that I would really like to develop that more, even just, to keep yourself humble a little bit. Remember that it's not always about agriculture, and reaching out to those sorts of people is very important. So unfortunately, I offer a pretty disappointing answer, but it's a very important topic, and it's actually one that I've thought about quite a bit and would like to pursue more, is just getting outside of my bubble a little bit.
Yeah, I think through college and 4-H, just because you're in 4-H doesn't mean you're in beef 4-H or horse 4-H. There's legal 4-H now. So just because you're in 4-H doesn't mean that somebody you'll meet will know a lot about the egg industry. And I've met quite a few friends, close friends I could say now, that I love inviting to the farm. And yeah, just like Ellie mentioned, it kind of makes you second guess yourself and take a step back and appreciate where you come from, because I'll invite somebody home to the farm and I'll say, hey, do you want to pick some rocks? This might be fun. And they're all about it. And I'm like, anyway, it's kind of nice, and it makes you appreciate where you come from. When someone's not from the industry and they come home and they just think, geez, you live out in the middle of nowhere, you got trees, smells nice, birds are chirping, this is great. And yeah, it's something I definitely take for granted a lot. So having friends that aren't in the industry is really important, I think.
For me, I like to take my friends that live in town and bring them out to the farm. And, you know, in the small town, everybody knows about farming, and I haven't met one person in my school that has no idea what's going on, but they definitely are a little bit detached from it. Like, they know, oh yeah, you ride a combine or you drive a tractor or whatever, but they don't really know it on a deeper level. So when my friends come out to the farm, I give them a little tour and they're like, wow, this is all yours? I'm like, yep, it is. They're like, yeah, you can't even see you across the other side of the yard. Yep, that's how it is over here. And just kind of exposing them to it, like I said earlier, and letting them ask the questions about it. You know, we have a bin yard outside of town, and we drive by it, and my friends are like, oh, what's that? And I'm like, oh, that's a bin. Like, oh, what's that do? Oh, you put grain in it. Why? I don't know, because you just do. That's what you do. You keep it there for a while. Oh, okay, yeah. So that's usually how it goes for me. Yeah.
Yeah, at our home, even in the small towns, probably we will be the only farmers in the next 3 villages won't have a farmer in it probably, but our villages are every 2 kilometers, so that's different than in Saskatchewan. But my girlfriend unfortunately doesn't have hectares or has arable land. They only got forestry, but they are pretty involved and also asking a lot of questions, since farming in politics, it's a very big discussion. Like, having just for us our own federal ministry, it pretty much exposes us in the daily discussions very often. If you open up a newspaper, you will definitely find like a discussion about environmental and legislation in Europe. And so we've got a lot to talk probably as farmers. We are not so many, but we have to answer those questions and at least show our perspective on it. And that exposes us quite often to people also not coming from agriculture.
Thanks.
I'm from Olds College, and I remember seeing a survey of our students, and roughly about 63% of them said they were going to actually go to industry first, then decide if they're going to go back to the farm. So I'm kind of curious your guys' own plans. Are you thinking about going right back to the farm, or are you going to work in industry first and then go back?
I guess I'll kickstart this off. Well, I remember Dad always saying when he was my age, he didn't have a choice, and he had to go back to the farm. And he said, do whatever you want, go in any industry you want, but don't feel pressured to come back home to the farm. I'm the youngest of 3 kids, so lucky for him, I do want a farm, because my 2 siblings don't. Right now I'm kind of pursuing a different path. I'm trying to become a land agent, which I love, trying to bridge the gap between oil and gas and farmers and landowners who aren't too happy about oil leases and wells on their land. I guess right now I'm kind of pursuing that, but I'd like to be able to come home to the farm eventually and slowly start taking over. So that's kind of my perspective on that.
Well, this is a very relevant question in my life right now, just in graduating this past spring. And it's definitely very common, I've noticed amongst my peers, to work in industry first, even if they have farms to go back to. Personally, for me, I've tried other jobs over my summers in between school, and I've also done extensive searching of jobs that I think would kind of fuel my fire as much as my job at home does. And I can't honestly say that I think that there is. And so as a result, I'm home now full time and probably going to be there for a while. Just the bottom line for me, I think, is there's nothing that I'm more passionate about than going outside every day and checking on the cows and, you know, a lot of what we talked about today, implementing a lot of the crazy and cool technology that's coming down the drain. I think while I'd love to say that I'd go for an industry job and gain experience in that way, I think that right where I am is where I want to be.
You guys feel free to jump in if you...
For me, I got one more year of high school left, and then I'm planning to go somewhere for university for ag business. But after that, I don't know. I'll probably figure it out, but I was thinking, you know, after I get my either diploma or degree, I don't know which one I want to go for yet, but probably I'll just maybe move to BC somewhere and be a snowmobile guide or something like that. Do something else for a little bit, you know, just get some experience in the world and then eventually come back to the farm and kick Dad out of there. And he can live at the lake if he wants, so, yeah.
For me, like my father is still 50 years old, and I think like he wants to have at least 10 years still working in the farming business. And like my little sister, I think she also wants to farm, and probably we would have equal rights. I would kick her out if she goes into horses. Meanwhile, despite this, I think it's pretty open for that, and I'd love to like take this time now also and have those 10 years experience deciding how it works.
Do we have time for one more?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you very much for the Ag in the Classroom plug. So I have to thank you for that. As Ag for Life, we deliver Ag in the Classroom in Alberta. So we work from K to 12, teachers and students, and we work diligently to work programming into the curriculum to bring agriculture into the classroom. So put all of that aside. What do you want us teaching these kids? What's the one message you want them to know? Because we're in the classroom. What are we delivering? What's the message?
I think that the main thing, and talked about it a little bit earlier, but is that shared value component, definitely. And I mean, depending on the age group that you're working with, that's maybe a tougher topic depending, but in whatever way that you can kind of portray the fact that farmers care just as much about the environment, and in fact, their economics and everything else relies on those components, and it's all just kind of in this cycle that each component relies on each other. But conveying that message that we're all caring about the same things and we're on that same side, and with, you know, the scientific facts behind it all, that's the main thing, is just that shared value component. We're all humans working on the same things and doing the best that we can.
Go ahead, yeah, that was good. Sorry. Yeah, I think egg safety. There's a lot of working in the industry. It can be really dangerous for young kids. Kind of running around, running equipment can be really dangerous. And I guess in the classroom, depending on the age group, you know, farming is fun, and it's fun to know where your food comes from and how it got on your plate. And, you know, maybe you can ask a farmer, depending on where you are, hey, do you want to have these kids out on the farm? And you can show them how you, depending on the season, you can show them how you unload grain from a bin. That's kind of fun. Or you know, combining, harvest, spraying, seeding, whatever they're doing. It might be kind of nice to take them out there and show them how it's done.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like the real world, exposing them to what it's like on the actual day-to-day is what I would love to learn the most, because sitting in a classroom and, you know, planting some seeds and going out and planting them outside is cool. Well, for me anyways, it's cool, but some other kids might not find it as interesting, and that's okay. But being able to see you know, when I was young, being able to see all the big equipment driving around and, you know, the combine in the field and seeing how you can have this wheat plant, you know, on the ground, then this big machine drives by and then it's gone, you know, like where did it go? And then that led to so many questions. And now I know, but, you know, just having that kind of real world experience and, you know, seeing what it's like on the day-to-day of a farmer is really important to learn, I feel.
I believe, like I remember, like in Europe, we usually do like an apprenticeship in advance and then go to university, like 2 years of hands-on training on 2 farms with education, and then we start our bachelor's 3 years, 2 years. Like it's a lot about graduation and having a good program done beforehand. And I think the strength probably of the university is like giving this overview, like caring about sustainability, like Ellie mentioned, sorry. Or like, yeah, having that overview as like where is the machine coming from or where is it going to? I believe that is probably giving this care to us students, like knowing where to look for, what do we need to have the good overview. That's what I was learning and wanted to learn at the university and really appreciated there.
Okay, I think we'll wrap up there. Thank you guys once again. Really appreciate it. Sitting up here, getting grilled by the lights and me for an hour. And I think I speak on behalf of everybody here that we know the next generation is in good hands because we got a pretty great crew up here today. So if the rest of the people in agriculture look like this group, I think the industry is in good hands. So thank you again. And yeah.
Thanks, Bryce. Thanks to all of our panelists today. Bryce asked me that if I had a 5-minute comedy routine, because now we have to move some chairs. And I said, I think you'll be faster because you have big muscles. So if everybody can just encourage them as they move their chairs. And I will introduce the next small presentation here. So up next, we have a 4-H presentation from Zander Ewert. Let's see, here we go. Thank you, guys. We were talking about ag safety. So Zander is a member of the Cartstairs 4-H Club, and today he's going to be delivering his presentation on his family's open farm days threshing experience. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Zander.
Just 1 second, I need to get your projector working. It's just warming up. I think it just takes a little bit of time.
Takes a little bit?
Yeah. Do you have a 5-minute comedy routine? No?
No, I don't. No. Should I bring the table for?
Just give it a second. People will be patient.
Yeah.
It's just kicking on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should I bring the table closer?
Sure, I can get it or help you.
Can everybody see?
I think so. Everybody
Yeah.
see that all right?
Good. Okay.
Okay, and then just down on here or on here. That's how it's easier. Yeah, down the sides.
I was just 3 years old when I first experienced this with my family. We've done it every year since, other than that 1 year that harvest went late, or it got too cold, or the other year that the bundles got snowed under, Oh, and there was that one time when the cows got out and ate all of our bundles on us. But every other year it's been done. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome you all here so I can share a family tradition that has been in our family for many, many years. Threshing is a harvest process that uses a stationary threshing machine, where the grain is separated from the straw and chaff. In today's terms, the process would be referred to as combining. Although I love harvest season, learning how to run a modern-day combine, but I have a different level of respect for the farmers who used to thresh. Threshing is a part of the heritage of our family. It all started with my great-grandpa Brown, great-great-grandpa. He owned this George White threshing machine. He used the machine prior to 1950. It then sat in the trees until the mid-'80s when my great-grandfather pulled it out and restored the machine. They had several years of threshing before he passed away. Paka, my grandpa, became the new owner of this machine. I like to think the knowledge I have about threshing has passed through the generations and lives in me. I have a passion for preserving the farming heritage of where we live and honoring the family members who have taught me. Through the generations, I have learned: 1, the process of threshing and preserving the farming heritage. 2, how to build a community by working together for a common goal. And 3, the importance of generosity and sharing what we have. Getting ready for a threshing day is a big process. Essentially, it all starts back in the spring when we seed the crop. That is also done the old way, with 4 horses and an antique seed drill. The crop grows over the summer months, and just before it's completely ripe, we use a machine called a binder. After the grain is cut, the grain is tied by a knotter. The bundles are then kicked out of the binder. We then can start the process of stooking. Individual bundles are gathered into groups of 8, forming a stook. The grain stalks are pointed upwards so the grain can dry out in time for threshing day. And this is a point when the cows got out and destroyed and ate all of our bundles. We are now at the point where we can start the setup for threshing day. Our first step is to decide where the threshing machine needs to go. It depends on the wind direction, because we don't want straw and chaff blowing all over the threshing machine and the tractor. Next, we dig holes for the front wheels to sit in. This levels the machine. Next, we crank the blower spout out to where we want the straw pile to be at the end of the day. We then pull out the grain auger, and then the grain wagon is placed underneath. We then belt the tractor to the thresher machine. If you will look at the model here, there is a twist in the belt. This is because that the thresher machine runs in an opposite direction of the tractor's engine is turning. Everything is now ready to go. We fire up the tractor to get the machine turning. We usually have 3 teams of horses, each pulling bundle racks. They go out to the field to collect bundles, which people can pitch onto the rack. Once a rack is loaded, the teamster drives the team nice and close to the feeder house of the thresher machine, so people can pitch the bundles on nice and easy. We always need to remind people to pitch the bundles heads of grain going in first. This is because the thresher machine will thresh the grain better for a cleaner sample. We also need to remind them not to let go of their pitchfork, because this has happened, where pitchfork has gone through the machine. That never, ever ends well. as the bundles are being pitched in. The crop material goes through the cylinder. The grain is separated from the straw and chaff. The straw goes out the blower, forming a straw pile at the end of the day. The grain goes up the clean grain elevator and out into the wagon. This process happens until the entire field is cleared of bundles. There is no way a day like this could happen without community support. Volunteers are needed to drive teams, load hay racks, pitch bundles, and keep things in working order. Meanwhile, coffee and pie and other desserts are being served, and stories are told of the good old days. We usually have something breaks down. This always brings the old-timers out. Those folks are all gathered around the machine trying to diagnose the problem. This is a nostalgic memory, and the joy on their faces is evident. Kids are also very involved. They're busy helping pitch bundles, load hay racks, and getting wagon rides, and getting the endless supply of pop, and jumping in that straw pile at the end of the day. All these people come not only for the joy of a community event, but also to support the work of Canadian Food Grains Bank. The Canadian Food Grains Bank is a partnership of 15 church-based agencies who work together to end global hunger. Millions of people face hunger every year, when accessing food can be a major challenge, when fleeing for safety or living through a famine. Sometimes the CFGB distributes food rations directly to people who need it. Other times, vouchers or cash are given so people can buy what they need at their local markets. The grain that we harvest through the annual threshing event is donated to the Canadian Food Grains Bank. On average, we thresh about 200 bushels of wheat each year. Community members also give a financial donation. And since the CFGB partners with the Canadian government, all donations are matched at a ratio of 4-to-1. Our event is a small part of the $25 million that help give food assistance to the developing world each year. So if you're looking for something to do next fall, you are more than welcome to come out to our place to join our community event. Typically, the Brown Family Threshing Bee happens on Thanksgiving weekend, but you may want to get in touch with me to confirm that date. My Family's Threshing Bee is an opportunity to gather as a community, raise money for international food relief, and preserve the farming heritage of where we live.
I mean, every time I meet a kid who's been through 4-H, it's like nothing I've ever seen. This is where we get to wrap today's event, and I want to thank each of you for attending, whether it was online or here in person in Calgary. I also want to thank our presenters for taking the time out of very busy schedules, our panelists for, again, taking time out of very busy summer student schedules, and everyone at Ad Farm who helped bring this to life. It's no small feat, and we appreciate you. So before we move into our Stampede Party, which Ad Farm is hosting just across the street, I do have a few logistics to go over with you. Those of you who are attending, in your name badges, there's tickets in the back. That's for food and drink. When you do cross across the parking lot, first of all, be careful of any moving cars and vehicles. Second, as you make your way through Ad Farm, just go straight in towards the back. For those of you who've been there, straight through to the kitchen. We're going to toast to that 40th anniversary that I mentioned previously this morning, or earlier today. And before we do that, I want to share a video. Now, this video features members of both past and present ad farmers who have invested a lot of time in this organization, much more than myself. And I welcome you to join with us as we watch.
We were formed because there was a need. In those days, there was all these new technologies that were starting to come out, and the companies needed to be able to reach farmers. And there wasn't an agency that could develop the messages that allowed us to be able to resonate with farmers.
It wasn't just enough to know that you needed this herbicide to grow this crop of wheat, but you had to understand how wheat was priced, the mechanisms that were used to market it, where the markets were. It was all facets of agriculture, right from the farmer, making heroes out of farmers. And I always thought, what a great comment to make. What a great tagline to have in your business.
It's still a farm-dedicated entity. It is still focused on being more than a communications provider. It's focused on helping clients solve business problems. It's got a lot of ag backgrounded, ag enthusiastic people in it. All of those, I think, were initial building blocks, and they're still here. Matter of fact, I think they're reinvigorated in recent years. And that's good. That makes me feel good.
We really get into the business of farming, and agriculture has always been important. We're working with them instead of, talking at them or marketing to them. It's different than marketing to, just an end consumer.
I think agriculture is change, it's adaptability, it's innovation, and that's what's made AdFarm continue that growth, is that we follow suit. We're always innovating, we're always adapting to what the market needs are and what our clients' needs are, and I think more of that will continue to happen.
If we keep the farmer at the center of the work we do, continue our efforts to be a catalyst for the advancement of agriculture, I think we'll continue to see success in the next 40 years.
AdFarm is a people-first company, and our staff are the lifeblood of the organization. Without good people, we do not exist today. There's been a lot of evolutions that we've seen in my 26 years here and 30 years in the business, which is exciting, right? To keep that balance of what got us here and what will get us into the future.
The one thing that AdFarm has done, it's stayed true to its values and its culture. It's stayed true to the type of work that we want to do for our clients. And we haven't changed a lot. And I think that says a lot. If you can stay with what you have, stay with what you do best, stay with what you believe in, your future is going to be much better than trying to change with every time the wind blows a different direction. And AdFarm's not done that.
I've seen that so many times, and it still is so heartwarming to watch. With that, thank you again. Thank you so much for joining us both in person and online. And for those of us in person, I look forward to joining with you to toast AdFarm and to celebrate Stampede. So let's get to the party. Bye, everybody.